Good evening once more. Thank you for joining us. Greetings from Istanbul to all of you comrades, friends joining us from different parts of the world. Um, Welcome to the first Global Anti-Militarist Webinar. I will give the floor now to Hakan Güneş, representing the No to NATO initiative, to give us our opening speech, and then we will be on with the sessions in due course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ekim. Let's see if this 5-minute rule works on my case or not. Let's see. Okay. So, dear friends, dear colleagues from all over the world, thank you for, first of all, accepting and joining us. I'm honored to open this vital international webinar at this very critical moment in the world history, while we are experiencing a tremendous war in the Gulf region in Iran. So I welcome everyone joining us from Turkey, across the globe, especially from the speakers. I would like to welcome the speakers from Italy, from Germany, as far as I see, Azerbaijan, Palestine, the United States, Spain, Brazil, Cyprus, and I also see participants from Czech Republic, Hungary, Bahamas, even Belgium, Malta. Thank you for joining us. Today, we convene to address the threat of the global arms race, definitely. That is the main issue. And then the regional impacts, the increasing war budgets. And while specifically scrutinizing NATO, we will also talk about the strategies to stop the threat of war and military pacts in the NATO case, especially. We are together on the 77th anniversary of the foundation of the NATO, as we all know. On the 77th anniversary, we must confront NATO's legacy over 50 coup d'etats, military interventions, and massacres facilitated by the counter-guerrilla formations of NATO. Our gathering is driven by a desire to dismantle the monopolistic system that fuels those conflicts. War does not only kill human beings, as we all know, it displaces people, it destroys livelihoods, it increases hatred among people of different ethnic groups, different confessions, and disproportionately affecting women, children, and the impoverished at the hardest. Dear friends, dear comrades, there's a famous quote from Anton Chekhov, which I often use. I mean, if there is a gun on the stage, it bounds to go off. And this is also the reality of our world today. I mean, the bombs are raining down on Iran. The Middle East is a war zone. And the Zionist regime of Netanyahu is continues its genocide in Gaza, in also southern Lebanon, and the 4-year war of Ukraine, as we all watching, and the Pakistani-Afghani border clashes, the civil wars in Africa, and well, we are witnessing this unprecedented destruction all over the world. So, I mean, if they are, compiling, if they are stockpiling the weaponry, I mean the weapons, then this probably will end up as Chekhov mentioned in his very famous quote. Yeah, it's bound to go off. So worse than the current situation is the danger of war spreading further today. If we just look at the figures like the military expenditures, the global arms spendings at the end of the Cold War in 1985, it was 1.1 trillion US dollars, and it decreased by the end of 1990s. It decreased up to 800 billion dollars, and from 2005 on, it increased again and reached the level by 2006. And now, after 20 years of unstopped increase, it reached to 2.5 trillion US dollars. And 1 trillion is only is used or it belongs to the United States. So over 1/3 of the military spendings of the global military spending belongs to the United States. So that's a very important fact, I believe. That only alone shows to what direction the world is heading. Yeah. So these military budgets created not from heaven, not from sky. It's from, created by stealing from the people, from the wages of the workers, from the social spendings, and from the investment in education, health, and housing. Now Donald Trump likes to double it, and the rate of theft he likes to increase and even further. And the 32 leaders just agreed with his proposal. And for that purpose, they will gather in Ankara this July on 6th and 7th of July in Ankara to celebrate and to talk about the details of implementation of this, military budgets, doubling their military budgets altogether. So for this, we will hold a counter summit. I mean, against this NATO summit, we would like to hold an international people's summit in Istanbul 2 or 3 days before the NATO summit. And they will speak, as we all know, they will speak in the name of monopolistic capital, armament, and debt. And we will speak in the name of people, the workers, peace, and humanity. They will try to strengthen the war organization, their NATO, and we will discuss how to create the political will altogether to dismantle and abolish all war organizations, definitely above all the NATO and all military pacts. And on this occasion, I would like to invite you to the People's Summit Against Militarism and NATO in Istanbul on July 4th. So please take note, and if possible, organize your programs and just welcome. We will try to organize all together. By the way, we will share with all the participants how to organize the organizing committee for the People's Summit. I mean, it will not be organized only by us. We would like to share the whole procedure and the whole organizing process with you and decide on the program altogether with all of the group that like to participate. So the floor is yours, and I hope to see you all in Istanbul on 4th of July in the People's Summit. And wish you success all in your presentations, and like to hear what's happening in your regions. What's your stand on those topics? We really need to hear, and we usually don't have such occasions to hear what other people like us trying to do, how they see the developments. And unfortunately, we have to meet on such issues more and more because it's getting more and more dangerous and militaristic every day. So thank you for listening, and hope to see you in Istanbul in person.
Thank you, Hakan. You were actually within time. So, good that we are starting in due time with session one. For the speakers, I will hold up a 1 minute sign once you have 1 minute left. Other than that, I'll try not to intervene in the process, so I'll just deliver the floor. We would like to start with Erkan Baş, chairperson of the Workers' Party of Turkey. I will give the floor to him. The speech will be in Turkish and you can hear the translation in English.
Herkese merhaba.
Hello everyone.
Bütün dostları, toplantımıza katılan tüm arkadaşları, onların şahsında dünyanın dört bir yanında mücadele eden tüm sınıf kardeşlerimizi, yoldaşlarımızı sevgiyle selamlıyorum.
We are all greeting all our comrades and friends in this fight we do together.
Deyim yerindeyse ayağımızın tozuyla toplantıya geldik. İstanbul başta olmak üzere Türkiye'nin dört bir yanında bugün NATO'nun kuruluş yıldönümü vesilesiyle kitlesel protesto gösterileri gerçekleştirdik.
We can say that we just came from abroad and we started to have many demonstrations in many cities all around Turkey.
farklı siyasi partilerle, sendikalarla, meslek örgütleriyle birlikte e, başlangıç olması adına önemli bulduğumuz protesto gösterilerimiz an itibariyle sorunsuz olarak bitti.
Our demonstrations all ended peacefully with different political parties we also organized together.
Şöyle söyleyeyim, Türkiye Sosyalist Hareketi açısından emperyalizme karşı mücadele önemli bir gündem maddesi.
For Turkish socialist movement, imperialism is very important topic.
Biz ülkemizdeki sosyalist mücadele tarihinin başlangıcını da 1920'lerde emperyalizme karşı, işgale karşı mücadeleden başlatırız.
We started our socialist stance with a fight against imperialism.
Ee, Özellikle 1960'lı yıllarda Türkiye'de sosyalist hareketin son derece kitlesel, etkin bir güç haline gelmesi sürecinde anti-emperyalist mücadelenin son derece önemli bir yeri vardır.
The anti-imperialist fight in Turkey especially had a place in Turkish socialist movement during 1960s.
90'lı yıllarda, 2000'li yıllarda sosyalizmin yenilgisinin, tarihin sonunun ilan edildiği yıllarda, emperyalizmin bittiği ilan edildiği yıllarda da Türkiye'de güçlü bir anti-emperyalist damar, bir mücadele hattı hep varlığını korumuştur.
In the end of 1990s and 2000s, anti-imperialist movement still was fresh and kept going.
Biz hiçbir zaman emperyalizmi sadece dışsal bir olgu olarak ele almadık.
We never thought imperialism as an outworld topic.
Türkiye'deki sermaye sınıfı ve onun iktidarları doğrudan emperyalizmle işbirliği içerisinde, onun uzantısı, onun bir parçası olarak Türkiye'de iktidarlarını sürdürdüler.
Um, the the Turkish um, the Turkish high part class is the body of imperialism.
E, Türkiye'de bugünkü iktidar her ne kadar farklı söylemler geliştirse de kuruluşunda doğrudan Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin e, desteği, yönlendirmesi, parmağı olan bir iktidardır. Adalet ve Kalkınma Partisi deyim yerindeyse Washington'da kurulmuş bir partidir.
In the Turkish ruling party, which is Justice and Development parties, although they say that it is not, they are actually bound to the US, and actually we can say it is established in Washington.
Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin Orta Doğu'daki tüm karanlık politikalarına ortak olmuş bir iktidardan söz ediyoruz.
We can say that the ruling is the partner of the dark politics. We may say that they are keep going in Middle East.
Ve özellikle vurgulamak istiyorum ki Trump'ın yeniden iktidara gelişiyle Türkiye'deki iktidarın emekçilere, muhalefete, halka dönük baskısında da bir yoğunlaşma söz konusudur.
With Trump becoming the ruler in US again, we can say that Turkish ruling parties um, the stress and everything against the Workers' Party and workers' class has been because of Trump's winning in US, we can say.
Trump'tan aldıkları destek, ona hizmet karşılığı aldıkları onayla Türkiye'de toplumsal muhalefeti e, sindirmek, bastırmak ve her tür hukuksuzluğu hayata geçirerek bunu başarıyorlar.
We can say that they also get support of Trump, and they do every injustice and everything they can implement in Turkish society.
Nasıl dünya çapında hukuksuzca, barbarca bir takım saldırılar gerçekleştiriyorsa Trump ve müttefikleri, Türkiye'de de iktidar benzer biçimde yasaları, anayasayı, en basit hukuksal ilkeleri ayaklar altına alan bir yönetim anlayışına sahip.
Just like they do injustices and violent attacks everywhere, Turkey also does this in its own country.
Dolayısıyla Türkiye'de Tayyip Erdoğan iktidarına, saray rejimi olarak adlandırdığımız Tayyip Erdoğan iktidarına mücadeleyle uluslararası alanda Trump'la, Netanyahu'yla bu kara ittifakla mücadeleyi birbirini tamamlayan öğeler olarak görüyoruz.
So we can say that fight against Erdogan in Turkey goes hand in hand with fight against Trump and Netanyahu.
Fakat eklemek isterim ki bu toplantıyla beraber biz de kendi mücadelemizde yeni bir sayfa açıyoruz.
And with this meeting, I can say that we are turning a new page in our fight.
Biz kendi ülkemizde hem sermaye iktidarına, burjuva iktidarına karşı hem de emperyalizme karşı mücadele konusunda oldukça deneyimli, birikimli ve kararlı bir siyasi partiyiz.
We are a very dedicated political party in Turkey with the fight in imperialism in also Turkey.
Ancak geldiğimiz aşamada uluslararası bir karşı devrim sürecinin yaşandığını ve Trump'ın, Netanyahu'nun, Musk'ın simgelediği bir uluslararası kara ittifakın dünyayı karanlığa doğru sürüklediğini görüyoruz.
So we can say that Trump and Netanyahu and Musk and all the things they started all over the world, we can say that there's a counter revolution that developed in the world.
Dolayısıyla mücadeleyi uluslararası boyutta da daha kuvvetli, daha etkili, daha gelişkin bir biçimde sürdürmek gerekiyor.
So um, we have to develop the fight and we have to make it effective, the fight effective.
Geçtiğimiz hafta Porto Alegre'de gerçekleşen birinci Uluslararası Antifaşist Kurultay sürecinde pek çok ortaklıklarımız olduğunu gördük. Dünyanın dört bir yanından gelen mücadeleci insanlarla ortak noktalarımızın çok daha fazla olduğu bir tablo ortaya çıktı.
From all around the world, there has been many attendees in the anti-fascist political summit that was held in Porto Alegre in last month, and we saw that there were a lot of um, people that was sharing the same point of view.
Belki çeşitli konularda farklılıklarımız, birbirine tam örtüşmeyen düşüncelerimiz olabilir. Ancak ortaklıklarımızın çok daha fazla olduğunu tespit etmemiz lazım.
Maybe there are some different point of views we can say, but we should focus on the things that we are working in common.
Ve en önemlisi ortak düşmanlarımıza karşı birlikte mücadele ettikçe ortaklıklarımızın artacağına da inanıyoruz.
We believe that if we fight against our um, common counterparts, we can say that we will find more common ground between us.
O yüzden böyle bir toplantıyı organize etme ihtiyacı hissettik. Ve NATO toplantısı vesilesiyle bu uluslararası karşı devrime, dünya çapında oluşan kara düzene karşı hep birlikte mücadele etmenin yol ve yöntemlerini yine birlikte geliştirmek istiyoruz.
So we would like to we would like to we would like to become together and find common grounds together to fight in unity.
Biz bugünden itibaren Temmuz ayındaki toplantıya kadar Türkiye'de elimizden geldiğince mücadeleyi büyüteceğiz.
Until July, we will be trying to get more and more powerful, and we will be working on this fight in Turkey.
Bu süreçte bu mücadelenin benzerlerini dünyanın çeşitli yerlerinde sürdüren yoldaşlarımızın deneyimlerinden faydalanmak istiyoruz.
In this process, we would like to share the experiences of other comrades all around the world to fight against this.
Önerilerinizden faydalanmak istiyoruz. Bu mücadeleyi uluslararası düzeyde hep birlikte sürdürebilmek için.
We would like to listen your suggestions to be able to fight together.
Ve en önemlisi hep birlikte mücadele etmemiz gerektiğine inanıyoruz.
And the most important is we think that we should all fight together.
Bu NATO toplantısını vesile kılarak e, buna karşı dünyanın dört bir yanından emekçilerin ortak sesini en güçlü biçimde haykırmak gerektiğine inanıyoruz.
We believe that we should raise the voices of everyone together with using this summit as a platform.
Temmuz ayında NATO toplantısının Ankara'da yapılması bir tesadüf değil.
It's not a coincidence that we will be holding, there will be the summit in Ankara in July.
Sizden harita üzerinde Türkiye'nin yerini bir kez daha hatırlamanızı rica ediyorum.
We would like to remember where Turkey is located on the map.
Hemen aşağıda Akdeniz'de Kıbrıs, Türkiye'nin komşusu.
There is Cyprus south of Turkey.
Hemen yanında Suriye, onun yanında Irak, onun yanında İran. Biraz yukarı çıktığımızda Ermenistan, Azerbaycan, biraz daha yukarı çıktığımızda Rusya. Bunlar şu anda dünyanın savaş bölgeleri.
There is Syria, Iran, Iraq, Azerbaijan. If you go up a little bit, they are all war zone, we may say.
Ve bunun tam ortasında emperyalizm bir meydan okuma kararı aldı.
And in the middle of all this, imperialism decided to make a challenge.
Biz de buna karşı barışın, kardeşliğin, eşitliğin ve özgürlüğün sesini hep birlikte yükseltmek istiyoruz.
And we want to raise our voice for brotherhood, sisterhood, for peace and unity.
Bunu hep birlikte yapmak doğrultusundaki kararlılığımızın ilk adımı olarak bu toplantıyı görmenizi rica ediyorum.
We would like you to see this meeting as the first step of our decisiveness on this.
Sizlerin önerileri, deneyimleri ile birlikte en etkili yanıtı vereceğimizden hiç şüphem yok.
I'm sure that we will be having the strong stance with your suggestions and your support.
Hep birlikte alacağımız kararların hayata geçirilmesi konusunda Türkiye İşçi Partisi bütün imkanlarını seferber edecektir.
As Turkish political party, we will be doing everything, using every manner to implement all this.
Ve barışın sesini en güçlü biçimde haykırmak için, hep birlikte haykırmak için sizi Türkiye'de ağırlamaktan, yoldaşlarınızı Türkiye'de ağırlamaktan da mutlu olacağımızı söylemek isterim.
And I would like to say that we will be so happy to host you in Turkey to raise our voice for peace.
Hepinize tekrar katıldığınız için teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank
Başarılı
you
bir
all
toplantı olmasını diliyorum.
for joining, and I'm wishing for a successful meeting.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce the second speaker, Sinhuan, from joining us from the United States, daytime, I believe. So representing DSA and Roses and Bread. Sin, the floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. Well, first off, thanks for the invitation. I had the opportunity to meet some of you at the recent International Anti-Fascist Conference in Porto Alegre, where we discussed how urgent initiatives like this one are, how important it is to increase the protagonism from DSA and the United States left the epicenter of the crisis. So I'm very heartened to participate in this discussion. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll speak a bit schematically, but hopefully this will be a helpful overview. Socialists in the United States view the global situation with great concern, owing to a combination of the deep structural crises of capitalism, as well as the exhaustion of neoliberal and substantive decline of U.S. hegemony, especially against the growing strategic threat the ruling class perceives in China. This strategic challenge has been growing for a long time, but the pandemic, as well as Russia's war on Ukraine and the joint U.S.-Israel genocide of Palestinians, made evident major deficiencies in the U.S. supply chains and gaps in maintaining its geopolitical power. We can ask, is there a rational strategic core to speak of when it comes to Trump's agenda? While it's true that the American state is full of contradictions, for example, the Republican Party is not very unified at this moment. There have been plenty of cases where the ruling class has been unable to collectively articulate its aims, most notably around this war on Iran. We can think of the Anthropic battle with the Pentagon, the breaks between Musk and Trump. Despite these things, despite the fact that Trump is individualistic, it's undeniable right now that what we're witnessing is a systematic attempt to wield the power of the American state to rearrange the global economy, rearrange geopolitical alliances to protect U.S. military, political, and economic dominance. And this is a project that unites a vicious neo-colonial foreign policy with a suffocating authoritarian agenda at home. And the mechanisms of this project are widely known. Internationally, it means a global tariff war, it means regime change, sanctions, currency swaps in Argentina, collusion with foreign figures, monopolization of natural resources, and direct attacks on sovereign countries, which we've seen escalating in Iran, the Middle East, and the Caribbean for some time now. Domestically, it means trying to reshore industry, crushing the power of labor in popular sectors to slash union rights, grow repressive state forces, take away people's civic freedoms, undermine the welfare state, and invest all the profits in big tech and militarism, and displacing all the popular discontent that comes with this onto vulnerable immigrant, Muslim, and LGBTQ populations. This past Friday, last week, Trump called for $500 billion more in defense spending. So $500 billion on top of a historical transfer in military spending increases past last year through his big, beautiful bill, and separate from the $200 billion that the Pentagon has been seeking for their assault on Iran. This direction was consolidated already. It was made very clear in the National Security Strategy document released last November in 2025. Sorry. Am I back now? It said my internet was going for a second. Let me turn off my video. Hopefully this is a little better. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
So
but the
Trump has
connection
consolidated.
seems bad.
Okay, hopefully it's
Right
a little
now
better
it's
now.
fine.
Okay, perfect. So Trump has consolidated a new direction, which he made very evident in the National Security Strategy document at the end of last year. It's really hard to overstate the consequences. His imperialism is the greatest threat to humanity and all of life on Earth. In this next period, multilateralism and international co-governance will not be the buzzwords that the American ruling class uses to manufacture consent. In the face of a crumbling rules-based order and Trump's naked neocolonialism, ruling classes around the world have concluded that the only way to defend themselves is by arming up and fighting might with what might, trying to decouple from the United States, increase their own country's lethal capacities, and punishing the working class in the process. So we have a very big task on our hands as the resistance, especially in the United States. At this moment, we're facing a particularly aggressive as well as vulnerable Trump administration. Aggressive, of course, everyone knows his imperialistic pursuits, but weak at the same time because he has aggravated the most important issue behind his reelection, namely the economy. The cost of living has been intolerable, even more so with gas and food prices increasing in response to the war on Iran. Social services across every aspect of society have been gutted, and people now very concretely understand what their government does for them because it no longer does it for them under Trump. There are also problems in sections of Trump's base, but most damningly, most importantly, there's an emboldened mass movement. You guys might be familiar with the recent developments. Last weekend, Saturday, March 28th, there was a historic mobilization under the name No Kings. This is actually the third iteration of this mobilization, which took place last June and I forget the other month. But each time it has grown numerically and politically in terms of the sectors that are represented, the experiences that are brought to the protest, and the level of political and organizational coordination between different actors. So this past Saturday, the mobilizations drew over 8 million people across 3,000 cities. Increasingly, the left, like especially DSA and other groups, they're adopting a more organized disposition towards these mass processes, which are contradictory, trying to give meaning to slogans like No Kings by also calling for no bombs on Iran, hands off Latin America, no billionaires running our society, and no saviors except for our own collective self-organization. No Kings was a great synthesis of all sorts of fights that have been bubbling up across American society, from union struggles, the movement around Zoran Mamdani in New York City, students fighting encroaching authoritarianism on their campuses, as well as the most recent anti-ICE upsurge in Minneapolis, where people have been mobilized for more than 3 months and have been fundamentally transformed in the process. It was ordinary people, their own defense networks, mutual aid, union struggles, and their mobilizations in the streets, not reliance on the Democratic Party leadership that kicked ICE out of Minneapolis. It's too early to tell, but it really does feel like a game changer for the resistance and for the international working class. Under Trump 2.0, we have many potent experiences that have taught us about the importance of self-organization, of political independence, and the outlines or the hints of a combative class-based program that are going to meet the challenges of the future. I think there are a lot of reasons for hope right now. Our movement is very young and diverse. It's in solidarity with Palestine and outraged by U.S. imperialism. And it's politically open partially because we don't inherit a lot of traditions from the past. But simultaneously, there are a lot of challenges. The movement right now is extremely, extremely fragmented still. It lacks leadership in a program. Last week when I got to meet with a Turkish delegation to the International Anti-Fascist Conference, they asked, what will life after Trump be like? And I said, on the one hand, we can't take too much for granted. Though Trump is weak, he still wields the power of the American state, and he's spent years laying the groundwork to deny the upcoming election results in both the presidential elections and the midterms. It's an unlikely scenario, but his theatrics often develop into real offensives. But on the other hand, I think the most likely scenario is that we have a Democratic Party take back of at least one house of the legislature and potentially the presidency as well. But even in that case, certain structural facts about the crisis we're navigating remain. If the Democrats come back, they will not restore jobs, they will not fund health care, they will not uphold free speech. So in this scenario of absolutely no possibility of restoring some fantastical status quo from the past, the left has to be able to articulate a new social and democratic republic that we want to build and the strategy we want to get there. And just to conclude, for the millions of people we see activated by Zoran, by Minneapolis, who have taken action to knock on doors or record ICE, there has to be a program, has to be a layer of political activists to help them take the next step, to help them, for example, not just oppose the war on Iran because they don't like high gas prices, but to oppose the war because they believe that they need a world beyond U.S. imperialism. And sorry, over time, if I missed anything, the organizers can share my contact. I'm excited to keep growing this initiative with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for this very informative speech, telling us a little bit about the domestic politics of US as well. I'm sorry I had to cut short. So, if the speakers can watch me with my little paper here, so you know that when you're in the 1 minute mark, and if I do this, you're done, basically. Not done, but, try to wrap it up. So thank you very much, Sin. To our next speaker from Azerbaijan, Nilüfer Mamedrezayeva, from the Labor Desk Confederation of Trade Unions. Nilüfer, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Because we have a limited time, so I want to start immediately. So today I want to speak about the militarization in the South Caucasus, particularly in Azerbaijan, and how it evolved over the decades and long before the current geopolitical tensions, and also far beyond them. So the South Caucasus have been heavily militarized, as is known, since the first Nagorno-Karabakh war, and this process reached even to a higher level throughout the Second Karabakh War, when an advanced weaponry and also external alliances and drones turned the region into a testing ground for modern warfare. And the war ended in November 2020 by a Russia-brokered ceasefire, but this ceasefire also was fragile and did not last long, and the peace itself was not a stable peace. And that war did not reshape only the borders and the, societies, but it also normalized the idea that the security must come from the military strength rather than the political dialogue. And since then, the military spending has reached to its highest level, which is, if I'm not mistaken, covers about like 5% of GDP, which is pretty above than the global average. And not only military spending, but also like military rhetoric and the strategic positioning in the region has steadily increased. And even after the ceasefire, the military operations and border escalations did not fully stop because the violations continued, the localized offensives continued, and the ceasefire has been fragile. And it shows us that the militarization has become a permanent condition rather than a situational wartime phenomenon, let's say. And today we are witnessing a shift in the nature of the perceived threats in the region. So the regional tensions are not only limited with Armenia and Azerbaijan dynamics, and following the recent geopolitical, let's say, tensions, including Iran, and also reported drone-related incidents in Azerbaijan, in Nakhchivan, the discourse inside Azerbaijan has even become more militarized. And the government, which is led by Ilham Aliyev, strongly condemned Iran over these incidents and publicly emphasized that Azerbaijan's armed forces are ready to respond. And this kind of rhetoric keeps the cycle where security is framed through military preparedness. And this is a core issue. So the militarization, because militarization is not only about like weapons or wars, but it's also about discourse and priorities. And when political leadership consistently frames the threats in military terms, it narrows the space for and almost makes it impossible for like diplomacy or civil society engagement or attempts for peaceful conflict resolution. And in Azerbaijan, militaristic discourse has become even more dominant throughout this period, not only in state level, but also in public opinion, and has a huge impact on public narratives, because it has a huge impact on it has a huge impact on people's understanding of patriotism and even their identities. And after each escalation, this discourse grows stronger and stronger and makes it almost impossible to advocate for alternative approaches. And that's why discussions like today, I think, matters a lot, because if we are serious about reducing the conflict in not only in South Caucasus but also in the world, we must critically examine NATO's role globally, and also we must critically examine the militarization, how it is reproduced locally. So only one sentence. I want in the end, I just want to say that the peace cannot be built in a region where the war is continuously prepared for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfect timing. Okay, so also it's very interesting for us to hear from inside Azerbaijan. Next, I will give the floor to Ercüment Akdeniz from Turkey, a journalist and writer who is joining us today. Again, he will be speaking in Turkish and there will be a translation. Ercüment Hocam, floor is yours.
Okay. Herkese merhaba. Davet için teşekkür ederim. Küresel jeopolitik dinamikler daha çatışmalı bir ortama doğru ilerliyor. İran'a yönelik saldırılar ve Körfez ülkelerini içine alan savaş bunun son örneği. Devam ediyor muyum?
I'm sorry, the translation will happen after the speech is over. So we'll hear the Turkish speech first and then the translation. Önce sizi dinleyeceğiz Türkçe, sonra İngilizce olarak çevrilecek. Siz bitirebilirsiniz. Buyurun.
Tamam. Bildiğiniz üzere NATO üye ülkelerin silahlanma bütçesini %5'e çıkardı. Rusya, Çin ve diğer rakipler de bu çılgın yarışın içindeler. NATO'nun belirlediği 2030 soğuk savaş konsepti büyük paylaşım savaşına doğru adım adım ilerliyor. Bu durum savaş dinamiğinin azalmak bir yana daha da büyüyeceğine işaret. Emperyalist savaş ve çatışmalar ölüm ve yıkımın yanında kitlesel göçlere neden oluyor. İOM, yani Uluslararası Göç Örgütü verilerine göre 2026 başında zorla yerinden edilmiş mülteci sayısı rekor tazeleyerek 123 milyona ulaştı. Dünya üzerindeki göçmen sayısı ise 231 milyon civarında. Son Körfez Savaşı ve kaydı olmayan göçmenler düşünüldüğünde aslında bu sayı çok daha fazla. Ben bu nüfusa dünya üzerindeki yüzer gezer kıta diyorum. Yani 8. kıta diyorum. Kapitalist sistem, savaş ve sömürü mekanizmasıyla birlikte sistematik olarak göç ve mülteci üretiyor. Yıkıcı olduğu kadar her savaştan sonra ucuz, güvencesiz göçmen emeği transfer eden acımasız bir sistem bu. Dolayısıyla göç bir neden değil, politik bir sonuçtur, bir düzen sorunudur. Son bir ayda Lübnan'da 1 milyon insan yerinden edildi. Gazze'de çoğu mülteci olan 2 milyon insan katmerli göçü bir kez daha yaşadı. 13 yıllık bir iç savaş yaşamış olan Suriyeli mülteciler Lübnan'a sığınırken adeta dünya tersine döndü. Çünkü şimdi Lübnanlılar Suriye'ye göç ediyorlar. Şara ve Mers görüşmesinde 1 milyon Suriyeli mültecinin gönderilmesi kararlaştırıldı, geri gönderilmesi kararlaştırıldı. Oysa çatışma ihtimali olan bölgelere mülteciler zorla geri gönderilemezler. İran'da yaşayan 4 milyon kadar Afganistanlı mülteci var ve bu kez bu mülteciler bir başka savaşın ortasında kaldılar. Amerika Birleşik Devletleri ve İsrail bombardımanları yetmezmiş gibi baskıcı İran rejimi deport işlemlerini arttırdı. Sınırın ötesine sürülen mülteciler bu kez de Afganistan-Pakistan savaşının içine düştüler. Beri yandan İran'ın zaferi, muhaliflerin, yenilgisi de rejim yanlıların kitlesel göçüne neden olabilir. Geçtiğimiz günlerde Türkiye'nin Ege sularında bir bot battı. 19 mülteci hayatını kaybetti. Bunlardan biri bebekti. Bottakilerin hepsi Afganistanlı mültecilerdi. Ne yazık ki bu trajedi ne ilk ne de son olacak. Öyle ki savaşın uzama durumu ve göçmenlere karşı uygulanan sert politikalar mültecileri daha ölümcül rotalara sürüklüyor. Yerküre üzerinde militarist ittifaklar, evet, ve paktlar güvenlik ve tehdit sıralamasını sürekli güncelliyorlar. Emperyalist güvenlik stratejileri içinde göçmenler de ciddi bir hedef artık. Nitekim Münih Güvenlik Konferansı'nda konuşan Amerika Birleşik Devletleri Dışişleri Bakanı Marco Rubio, sınırların olmadığı bir dünya bize büyük zarar verdi dedi. Peki. Ve ISIL'in işlediği cinayetler de buna zaten işaret. 1900 Cenevre Sözleşmesi ayaklar altında. Avrupa Birliği ile Amerika Birleşik Devletleri ve NATO'nun güvenlik konsepti göçmen düşmanlığı konusunda da ortaklaştı. Sonuç olarak, sonuca geleyim zamanım kalmadığı için, göç politikaları egemenler için stratejik hamlelerin sürekli ve vazgeçilmez bir parçası olarak yeniden üretiliyor. Savaşın, şovenizmin ve sömürünün rekabetinin kışkırtıcı bir enstrümanı olarak göçmenler hep hedefteler. O halde savaşa karşı barışın, sömürüye karşı enternasyonel sınıf mücadelesinin bir parçası olarak göçmenleri kazanmak gerek. Belki de bir barış zirvesini konuşmanın zamanı, içinde işçi sınıfı, ezilen halklar ve mültecilerin olduğu bir vicdan ve insanlık zirvesi. Bütün kıtalardan halklar 8. kıta insanlarına kucak açarlarsa bu neden olmasın? Teşekkür ederim.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Now we will hear the speech by Ercüment Akdeniz in English. So,
hello everyone. Now I will translate the speech. Can everyone hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. Global geopolitical dynamics are moving toward a more conflict-driven environment. The attacks on Iran and the war involving Gulf countries are the latest examples. NATO has increased member states' military spending to 5%. Russia, China, and other rivals are also part of this frenzied race. NATO's so-called 2030 Cold War concept is advancing step by step toward a major war of division. This indicates that the dynamics of war are not decreasing, but rather intensifying. Imperialist wars and conflicts cause not only death and destruction, but also mass migration. According to IOM data, at the beginning of 2026, the number of forcibly displaced people reached a record 123 million. The number of migrants worldwide is around 231 million. Considering the recent Gulf War and undocumented migrants, this number is actually much higher. I call this population a floating continent on Earth, the eighth continent. The capitalist system systematically produces migration and refugees through its mechanisms of war and exploitation. It is a ruthless system that, while destructive, also transfers cheap and insecure migrant labor after every war. Therefore, migration is not a cause, but a political outcome, a systemic issue. In the past month alone, 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon. In Gaza, 2 million people, most of them refugees, have once again experienced compounded displacement. The world has turned upside down. While Syrian refugees who fled a 13-year civil war once sought refuge in Lebanon, now Lebanese people are migrating to Syria. In the Shara meeting, it was decided to return 1 million Syrian refugees. However, refugees cannot be forced to return to regions where the possibility of conflict still exists. Around 4 million Afghan refugees living in Iran have now found themselves in the midst of yet another war. As if US and Israeli bombardments were not enough, the repressive Iranian regime has intensified deportations. Refugees pushed across the border have now fallen into the Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict. On the other hand, a victory for Iran could trigger mass migration of opposition groups, while a defeat could lead to migration of regime supporters. Recently, a boat sank in Turkey's Aegean waters, and 19 refugees lost their lives, including a baby. All of them were Afghan refugees. Unfortunately, this tragedy is neither the first nor will it be the last. Prolonged wars and increasingly harsh migration policies are pushing refugees toward more deadly routes. Militarist alliances and pacts across the globe continuously update their list of security and threats. Within imperialist security strategies, migrants have now become a serious target. As US Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated at the Munich conference, a world without borders has harmed us greatly, adding that mass migration threatens the future. The killings in this context, at the same time, the EU Council has adopted very harsh decisions against migrants, presenting them as asylum reform. This new approach systematically pushes refugees beyond borders and pursues them back to their countries of origin. The gains of the 1951 Geneva Refugee Convention, along with migration and asylum rights, are being trampled. The EU-Turkey readmission agreement is spreading globally as a model, turning less developed countries into migrant warehouses for central capitalist states. At this stage, Trump's national security strategy and the EU's security strategy appear to converge in targeting migrants. Under the pressure of the far right and rising racism, ruling powers are spreading fear of demographic change and incorporating the protection of the native population into their security doctrines. This strategy is also used to draw populations in America, Europe, and beyond into chauvinism and war policies. Meanwhile, Europe, facing an aging population, needs a young workforce. So how will this gap be filled? By transferring temporary contract-based migrant workers instead of accepting refugees. This has been the EU's model for some time. In other words, new, lower-cost channels are being opened to import cheap and insecure migrant labor for the European bourgeoisie. In this way, the working class is forced into competition between locals and migrants. Yet, war and exploitation always hit the lower classes the hardest. In conclusion, as we can see, migration policies are continuously reproduced as an essential and strategic tool for ruling powers. Migrants are constantly targeted as a provocative instrument of war, chauvinism, and exploitative competition. Therefore, migrants must be embraced as part of struggle for peace against war and for international class solidarity against exploitation. Perhaps it is time to speak of a peace summit, one that includes the working class, oppressed people, democratic forces, and refugees. A summit of consensus and humanity. If people from all continents were to embrace the people of the 8 continents, why shouldn't this be possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Defne. So I will continue with Eric Toussaint from Belgium, CADTM. Eric, I guess are you here?
I am with you.
All
Yes.
right, great. Thank you. So the floor is yours.
Okay. So I am very happy to participate to this webinar. I am the spokesperson of the Committee for the Abolition of Illegitimate Debt, which is a world or international network with an implementation in more than 30 countries of Africa, Asia, Latin America, Caribbean, and Europe. and also Middle East and Arab region. I have been an active participant to the anti-fascist and anti-imperialist conference, which took place in Porto Alegre last week from the 26th to 29th of March. I was part of the organizatory international committee, and we were very happy that the Workers' Party of Turkey sent a delegation with its president. We were very happy that you, member of the parliament, who is in jail since 2 years, signed the international call. And we are also very glad to say that in the final declaration of the conference, we are convoking the people to go to Turkey for the anti-NATO summit you will organize. And we think that it is a very important and positive initiative you are taking. Of course, we oppose the NATO since its beginning, I would say. And personally, when I began to be an activist, one of my first demonstration was in April 1917 to try to reach the headquarters of the NATO, which is based in Brussels, in my country. I was 16 years old. I was put by the police in jail for this participation to this demonstration. And since this epoch, I am struggling against NATO. And it's clear that NATO decided to expand its nefast, negative activity in 1999 when NATO participated to the war in ex-Yugoslavia, attacked the Chinese embassy and began to intervene out of its legal or official sphere, intervening in Asia, in Afghanistan, and other countries under the leadership of the United States. And of course, the expansion of NATO decided by Washington at the end of the 90s with the integration of several countries who were before that part of the Soviet bloc is part of the problem and part of the reason which led to give arguments to Putin to invade Ukraine in February 9, 2022. It's clear that we oppose the invasion of Ukraine, and the expansion of NATO doesn't give a real argument to Putin to invade a sovereign country. So we have to combine the opposition to NATO, expansion, intervention, to advocate for the dissolution of NATO, but also we should oppose other aggressive imperialism intervention, like the one realized by Putin in Ukraine. And it's not the only intervention of Putin in his in the region of the ex-Soviet Union in Caucasus, etc. Going back to the anti-fascist, anti-imperialist conference, I am concluding. We adopt a final declaration. I think it's a positive one. I hope that you will, if it's not already translated into Turkish, that you will translate it in Turkish. And I'll reaffirm that we will be with you in Turkey in the activity you will convoke and organize in July again the NATO Summit. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much. We expect to see as many people as possible in Turkey, hopefully. So, okay, so next I will give the floor to Wael Abed from Palestine on behalf of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Wael, can you hear us? Are you here?
Yeah, sure. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Well, my speech will be about NATO's complicity from Palestine to Iran. I would like to begin with 3 questions. Why does a military alliance created for collective defense never defend the defenseless? Why does it rush to intervene in Kosovo or Libya under the banner of humanitarian protection, but remain silent when a child is pulled from the rubble in Gaza hour after hour and day after day? And why does the same alliance that claims to uphold democracy and human rights openly arm, fund, and politically shield an occupying power that has been accused of genocide before the International Court of Justice? So this is the imperialist nature of NATO. NATO is not a peacekeeping organization. Since the foundation of the NATO in 1949 under the US leadership, NATO pretended to be a shield against external threats. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, NATO did not dissolve. Instead, it reinvented itself. It expanded, it bombed, and destroyed countries. Why? Because NATO's real mission is not collective security. It is enforcement of Western domination. The United States, as a dominant power inside the NATO, uses the alliance to secure energy routes and to crush any liberation movement that dares to challenge the American-led world order. If we try to speak about NATO's complicity with the Zionist entity, NATO claims to stand for human rights, yet it has a strategy, while it has a strategic partnership with the Zionist entity. This strategic partnership with an entity that has imprisoned, bombed, and starved an entire population for over 77 years. So if we go and try to speak about some facts during the last war in Gaza, we have to know that the United States gives the Zionist entity $3.8 billion per year as military aid. During the last war in Gaza in 2024, the United States funded the Zionist entity with $17 billion as emergency funding. If we try to speak about the other NATO members, for example, during the last war on Gaza, the United Kingdom exported military competence to the Zionist entity. Germany sent tank shells, anti-tank weapons. France and Italy exported missile defense parts. And NATO, as an alliance, conduct joint exercises with the Zionist entity, shares intelligence under the pretext of counterterrorism, and has openly backed the Zionist entity's so-called right to self-defense, while Gaza was being turned into a graveyard for children. So NATO member states are not spectators, they are active participants. If we move to the situation right now in Iran, and now the alliance is deeply implicated in the US and the Zionist entity war on Iran. Since February 28, the United States and the Zionist entity have launched a military campaign against Iran. European NATO members have largely refused to join directly. For example, Spain, France, Italy, and Poland have restricted military access, but that doesn't mean that they are not implicated in what's happening in Iran right now. NATO members provided critical support to the Zionist entity during the 12 days war in June 2025, including intelligence, tracking, and air defense. The Turkish radar station, a NATO facility, shared radar data with other alliance members, data that reached the Zionist entity forces. So Iran's own army chief stated that his country fought not only the Zionist entity, but also the advanced military technologies and the strategic backing provided by Western and NATO countries. So the truth is that we are speaking about double standards. This is NATO's double standards. It intervenes overnight when its own interests are threatened: oil routes, naval bases, gas fields. But when a Western ally commits war crimes, NATO turns its head. It calls for restraint while the bomb falls. It speaks of humanitarian pauses while blocking ceasefires at the UN Security Council. This is not an accident. It is the foundation of an unjust global order that privileges Western control and denies self-determination to nations like Palestine and Iran. So what must be done for confronting NATO? What we have to do? First, we have to expose, we have to launch media campaigns, public discussions, and publications that name the NATO for what it is: a military machine for domination. We connect the genocide in Gaza to the destruction of Iran, the occupation on other countries. Secondly, we have to mobilize, we have to link the Palestinian struggle with the struggle of peoples in Latin America, Africa, and Asia against imperialism. We need to build a united front that refuses to treat NATO as a defensive alliance. The third point, we have to revive the historical archive of NATO and Zionist entity crimes. To conclude, NATO says it stands for security, but for Palestinians, for Iran, NATO stands for siege, for bombing, for occupation, and for genocide. So silence is support. So we need, and we will not be silent. We will not accept that an alliance of wealthy nations can destroy entire peoples in the name of defense. The question is no longer what NATO is doing. The question is what we are doing to stop it. Thank you so much for giving me this word. No to NATO, free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this speech. And we also would like to send our solidarity from Turkey with the Palestinian people. I'm sure many people feel the same way. And I'm speaking on their behalf as well. Thank you. So next we have Israel Dutra from Brazil. And the speech will be in Portuguese, as I'm just informed now. But there will be an English translation afterwards. So Israel, the floor is yours. I don't see you on screen, but I guess you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I speak in Spanish and translation Uras or other comrade.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it will be, I'm sorry, in Spanish, sorry. And yeah, then there will be an English translation. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias. La celebración de este webinario, el seminario web, representa una importante victoria. Demuestra la diversidad y los compromisos de las compañeras y compañeros del TIP en la construcción de una posición internacionalista y la lucha contra el imperialismo.
Oh, the translation will be at the very end, so please go ahead.
Okay?
Yes, yes. Please finish your speech and then the translation will follow once everything is done.
Estamos viviendo el punto álgido de la agresión imperialista contra el Irán. Este es el punto de partida. Repudiar esta agresión para que los Estados Unidos e Israel sean derrotados sería un punto de inflexión en la situación política mundial. Y dentro de este contexto surgen otros temas. La política ofensiva de Trump contra los pueblos de nuestro continente latinoamericano, como el caso de Venezuela y Cuba, la crisis de la OTAN y la necesidad de profundizar una campaña que defienda la retirada de las bases estadounidenses contra el aumento de los presupuestos militares y por el fin mismo de la propia OTAN, la solidaridad con el pueblo palestino, el boicot a Israel y el apoyo a la flotilla Global Summit. En este sentido, acabamos de celebrar una victoriosa conferencia internacional contra el fascismo y por ende contra el imperialismo, en defensa de la soberanía de los pueblos. Aprovecho esta oportunidad para destacar la presencia de compañeros del TIP, empezando por el diputado y dirigente Erkan Bas, también la compañera Firenze y otro compañero más, que estuvieran presentes con una delegación de 3 compañeros del TIP a Porto Alegre. Su partido envió un saludo muy especial a la conferencia y lo tenemos de forma muy calurosa. En el mismo fin de semana de la conferencia se reunió el CEPAC, la incipiente articulación al fascista internacional de los Estados Unidos con Trump, donde Flávio Bolsonaro pronunció un discurso acreditándose como el representante del trumpismo en Brasil. Porto Alegre fue, en la práctica, un contrapunto candente a este foro. Estableció un puente con las manifestaciones del 24 de marzo en Argentina, con el convoy Nuestra América. Muchos de sus miembros regresaron a tiempo para la conferencia. Este convoy llevó solidaridad de paneles solares a Cuba, con la enorme manifestación antifa que tuvo en Londres, donde algunos hablan de 500,000 personas, con el debate sobre Irán, que ha resistido y transformado la ofensiva de Trump y Netanyahu en un problema más profundo. Y sobre todo con la gran manifestación No Kings, que fue la tercera jornada unificada para derrotar Trump, movilizando a millones de personas en millares de ciudades de Estados Unidos. En Porto Alegre, como dice la carta final, se está preparando la respuesta con prioridad en las calles a las acciones de la extrema derecha. Nunca como hoy la lucha contra el imperialismo y el fascismo ha sido tan actual y necesaria. Esta lucha debe coordinarse a nivel internacional. La Conferencia Antifascista y por la Soberanía de los Pueblos se compromete a continuar la lucha sin descanso y como espacio de construcción de unidad contra el auge de la extrema derecha y las agresiones imperialistas. Frente a esta barbarie, enarbolamos la bandera de la solidaridad internacional, de la lucha de los pueblos, de un futuro socialista, ecológico, democrático, feminista y antirracista. La unidad expresa en la actividad de diversos sectores de izquierda radical sin exclusión es un paso adelante. La actividad de Porto Alegre nos prepara en el terreno para los retos donde serán las propias elecciones brasileñas, un capítulo clave para la confrontación con el imperialismo y con Trump. Tendremos 3 elecciones decisivas con la probable injerencia de las Big Techs, la colombiana, las elecciones de Brasil y las elecciones de midterm, mitad de mandato de Estados Unidos. Defendemos la victoria militar de Irán contra Israel sin prestar apoyo político al régimen de los ayatolás. La campaña de Cuba contra el bloqueo, la lucha de los inmigrantes en todo el planeta, el fin del secuestro de Maduro y Cilia Flores, además de denunciar el imperialismo de Putin. La Carta de Porto Alegre destaca un calendario que prioriza en el evento que nuestros compañeros y ustedes en Turquía preparan contra la OTAN ahora en julio de 2026. Desde Brasil brindaremos apoyo, daremos difusión y haremos todo lo posible para que sea un gran éxito. Pueden contar con nosotros hombro a hombro para intervenir en la derrota del imperialismo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Israel. So now we will have the English translation of the speech. Thank you.
Hello. The holding of this webinar represents an important victory. It demonstrates the diversity and commitment of the Workers' Party's comrades in building an internationalist position in the struggle against imperialism. We are currently witnessing the peak of imperialist aggression against Iran. This is the starting point. Rejecting this aggression to the United States and Israel are defeated would mark a turning point in the global political situation. Within this context, other issues arise. Trump's offensive policy against the peoples of our continent, Latin America, as in the cases of Venezuela and Cuba, the crisis of NATO, and the need to deepen a campaign for the withdrawal of US bases against the increase in military budgets and for the dissolution of NATO itself, solidarity with Palestinian people, the boycott of Israel, and support for the Global Summit flotilla. In this sense, we have just held a successful international conference against fascism and therefore against imperialism and in defense of the sovereignty of peoples. I take this opportunity to highlight the presence of comrades from the Workers' Party, beginning with MP and leader Erkan Baş. 2 other Workers' Party comrades were also present. And their party sent a very special greeting to the conference. On the same weekend as the conference, CPAC, the emerging international neo-fascist articulation in Trump's United States, met where Flavio Bolsonaro delivered a speech presenting himself as the representative of Trumpism in Brazil. Porto Alegre was in practice the heated counterpoint to that forum. It built connections with the March 24 demonstrations in Argentina, with the Nuestra America convoy, many of whose members returned in time for the conference, which brought solidarity and solar panels to Cuba, with the massive anti-fascist demonstration that took place in London, where some speak of 500,000 people, with a debate on Iran, which has resisted and transformed the offensive of Trump and Netanyahu into a deeper problem, and above all with the large No Kings demonstration, which was the third unified day to defeat Trump, mobilizing millions of people in hundreds of cities across the United States. In Porto Alegre, as stated in the charter, the response is being prepared, prioritizing street mobilization to confront the actions of the far right. Never has the struggle against imperialism and fascism been as relevant as necessary as it is today. The struggle must be coordinated at the international level. The Anti-Fascist Conference for the Sovereignty of Peoples commits to continuing the struggle without rest and as a space for building unity against the rise for the far right and the imperialist aggression. In the face of barbarism, we raise the banner of international solidarity, the struggle of peoples, and a socialist, ecological, democratic, feminist, and anti-racist future. The unity expressed in this activity among various sectors of the radical left without exclusion of imposition on the other sectors is a step forward. The Porto Alegre activity prepares us at both the national and international levels for the challenges ahead, where the Brazilian elections themselves will be a key chapter in confronting imperialism and Trump. We will face 3 decisive polarized elections with the probable interference from big tech, the Colombian presidential election, the Brazilian general election, and the US midterm election. We defend the military victory of Iran against Israel and Trump without offering political support to the regime, the Cuban campaign against the blockade, the struggle of migrants across the world, the end of the abduction of President Nicolas Maduro, and MP Celia Flores, while also denouncing Putin's imperialism. The Porto Alegre letter highlights a calendar that prioritizes the event of our comrades in Turkey are preparing against NATO in July 2026. From Brazil, we will offer support, ensure its visibility, and do everything possible to make it a great success. You can count on us, shoulder to shoulder, to contribute to the defeat of imperialism. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Litsa Pridas from Greece, Communist Liberation. Litsa, are you ready with us? Litsa, are you with us?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay,
I
great,
couldn't
great.
find. Okay.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Workers' Party of Turkey for the invitation to participate to this very important anti-militarist internationalist webinar, which I greatly welcome on behalf of my organization as well, Communist Liberation from Greece. This initiative is of a great importance as the global situation with the developments in the war in the Middle East, or the West Asia, as I call it,
Litsa, I'm sorry. Before you continue, we'd love to see your lovely face, but we don't.
Thank you.
We just see your so we just see the upper part. We don't see your face. So could you turn the camera a little bit down, maybe?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we'd like to see you.
Okay.
Okay, amazing. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
I hadn't noticed it. So, can you see me now? Okay. So the danger of the war spreading beyond the region is evident, and any escalation could potentially lead us even to a world war. So our worker class has to organize. Europe is maintaining an awkward stance amid all these developments, leaving the initiative to the Americans and the Zionists. And this is because European countries have focused on the issue of the war in Ukraine, for which they have decided to proceed with the militarization of the economy by investing 800 billion in the upcoming period. The EU is becoming a union of war, dragging European societies into a new era focused on military power and global competition. As the economic situation in Europe is stagnating on the borderline of recession, the European governments are trying to revive the economy by reinforcing the war industry. The escalation of the war in the Middle East throws their plans off track and makes them hesitant to cooperate with the Americans who are fighting their own war. The Greek government, as a member of the EU, the Greek government of New Democracy, pursuing the policy of the Syriza government, which initiated our country's alliance with the Zionist regime of Israel, along with Egypt and Cyprus, has moved to directly involve our country in this war, sending weapon systems and warships to the region, while also conceding the bases in Crete and elsewhere to the Americans. The deployment of 2 Greek frigates and 2 F-16 fighter jets to Cyprus under the pretext of protecting it from Iranian missile attacks constitutes a decisive step towards a dangerous escalation, dragging the country further into the modern crusade led by the US and Israel, together with other willing participants, against Iran. It demonstrates how dangerous the policy of the present and previous governments has been in integrating our country into the Greece, Cyprus, Israel, Egypt military axis. It also reveals in a chilling way what the warmongering NATO and EU alliance is about, what Rearm Europe aims for, and why they seek to financially strangle the peoples in order to fund their armaments programs. By taking advantage of this situation, our government also exacerbates the antagonism between the bourgeois classes of Greece and Turkey, which is extremely dangerous under the current circumstances. Nevertheless, the overwhelming majority of our country's working class and youth stand in solidarity with the heroic Palestinian people who are undergoing genocide carried out by the Zionists. So many events, rallies, demonstrations have been organized, and people have been participating at the March to Gaza and the Global Summit Flotilla. And at the same time, they stand with the people of Iran, demonstrating, organizing events, etc. They stand with the people of Iran who are heroically resist the attacks of the imperialists and have so far emerged victorious. More and more people participate in the ongoing anti-war rallies and demonstrations taking place in the capital and all over the country, having delegitimized the government's policy and to a large extent discredited the bourgeois political system. The economic consequences of the ongoing war are already being felt by the working class, and the expected escalation will make it even harder for the poorest members of the society to survive. This is contributing to the rapid mobilization of an ever-growing number of protesters. Our main aim is to build a broad anti-war and anti-fascist movement together with other political organizations in our country, with the goal of the people overthrowing our servile government and developing a workers' and popular movement to seize power, as the bourgeois system is not eager to serve the interests of the people, being bound to the imperialist structures such as NATO and the EU. It is our duty to defend the interests of the people and to fight for our country's complete disengagement from the imperialist structures and military alliances, NATO, the US, Israel, and the EU, and to prevent participation in wars beyond our borders. It is our duty to fight so that the war and the genocide in Palestine stop immediately. The US, British, and NATO bases get out from Greece. The bases not to be used in the dirty war against Iran, no involvement of our country and no participation in military interventions, and our soldiers not to be deployed beyond our borders, and those already abroad come back immediately. Comrades, we're at a very critical turning point in history, and that is why internationalist cooperation among the peoples of the region and of all Europe is more necessary than ever, so we can resist the policies that are leading us toward a completely catastrophic war. We call for the creation of a unified internationalist anti-war movement led by the working class to oppose militarization and reject institutions such as NATO and the EU. We should maintain independence. From all imperialist blocs, whether Western or Eastern. There is a need for a renewed anti-capitalist and communist left, asserting that defending people's rights requires breaking away from the EU, from a class-based internationalist perspective. It is impossible to oppose capitalism while remaining aligned with the EU, which is presented as its most advanced political and economic structure. We must move toward closer cooperation, even through joint actions based on documents we agree upon. Time does not wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Comrades, when I have to cut you short, please, don't be upset. I'm showing the sign. It's for the sake of time only. It doesn't mean that we don't love listening to every one of you. Thanks a lot, Litsa. Next, we have Andreu Cole from Anticapitalista, Spain. Andreu, are you here?
Hello, can you hear me? That's okay?
Yes, perfect. So the floor is yours.
Thanks. Very briefly, just 3 reasons to leave NATO, a remark on the situation in Europe, and a very quick reference to the Spanish state to conclude. So 3 reasons. Military blocs increase inter-imperialist tensions and the risk of global war as that are mounting, as other comrades just said. NATO always has subordinated the members to the American military-industrial complex and foreign policy agenda, allegedly created to fight so-called Soviet totalitarianism, but the destruction of former Yugoslavia, the attack on Libya, and the occupation of Afghanistan happened after the Cold War, which proves the real nature of the organization. And as you know, nowadays it defines China as its systemic enemy. third, as an instrument of political control over member states and a threat for democracy in general, and labor and socialist and communist movements in particular, as you know, in Turkey, of course, but we've also suffered in countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, through military coups and far-right terrorism sponsored by NATO's secret services and so on. Unfortunately, due to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the European ruling classes have convinced broad layers of society, and unfortunately, even some currents in the left, that NATO is a kind of NGO that protects human rights, democracy, and small countries against authoritarian imperialisms. Obviously, this has never been the case, and we must confront the militaristic offensive of the ruling classes and warmongering, remilitarization of the European Union, the expansion of NATO, and the support to Zionist genocide in many of the countries. In Anti-Capitalistas, we have no doubt that Putin is responsible for the invasion of Ukraine, but then nevertheless, NATO bears with a great responsibility for provoking the war and has transformed the situation to wage a proxy war against Russia on the back of ordinary Ukrainian people. In Anti-Capitalistas' view, it is key to fight all forms of imperialism, but revolutionaries in each country should prioritize the struggle against their own imperialism, one of the central ideas of Lenin and his condemnation of class collaboration during World War I. Just to conclude, you may ask how an unprincipled neoliberal politician like Pedro Sánchez has become a kind of world leader of pacifist left. So, I'm saying sarcastically, obviously. The only explanation is the reactionary turn of the majority of European governments and the rise of the far right worldwide, which makes Sánchez appear as a kind of social democratic Che Guevara or something of the kind. Although it's not too difficult to understand that Trump and Netanyahu's current war of aggression against Iran can only lead to catastrophe in the region and globally. Nevertheless, Sánchez uses this war to recover electorally, his stand against the war, to recover electorally from the continuity of neoliberal policies in Spain. And he's called pacifism hasn't been an obstacle to increase military spending, to keep maintaining military trade with Israel, and hasn't led to a break of diplomatic relations with the Zionist state, or to stop funding the war in Ukraine through the European Union. These are our central demands in this political situation when we commemorate in the Spanish state the 40th anniversary of the anti-NATO campaign, in which we were about to defeat pro-NATO socialist government in the referendum to leave, in which revolutionary left had a key role in the campaign at the time. So many thanks for the invitation and warm congratulations for the
Beni davet
initiative
ettiğiniz için teşekkür ederim ve bu
and communist greeting.
size nazik bir şekilde tebrik ederim.
Thank you so
İkinci yılda
much.
bu arada.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we have the Turkish translation coming in, or okay, all right, real good. Okay, thank you. Without further ado, we will go back to Greece. Actually, another comrade from Greece, Yanis Chalas, from OKD Spartakos. Yanis, are you
Yes,
here?
I'm here. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very well. Okay, so
Thank you very much. Good evening to all comrades. Yes, I'm Yannis. I represent OKD Spartakos, the Greek section of the Fourth International. I'm a teacher and trade unionist in Greece. And I too want to thank you for the invitation, to thank Turkish Workers' Party and all the comrades that are participating. And we're looking forward to a very successful anti-NATO summit in this summer. First, we'll talk about the reactionary policy of the Greek government in all issues regarding war and militarism and NATO participation. They are trying to increase the influence of Greek capital in the region in two ways. The one is to participate in the war campaigns of Western imperialism, and especially, of course, the United States under Trump and the Zionist regime. They are one of the strongest supporters of the Zionist regime. And their main goal, of course, is to counter the influence of Turkish capital. They are trying to counter the weaknesses of the Greek capitalism regarding their economic and political influence by increasing their military strength and building reactionary alliances, not only within NATO, but with the Zionist regime, the Egyptians, the dictatorship of al-Sisi, and other reactionary regimes of the region. For example, regarding the domestic and militarization policy, they have been increased military service. They are even trying to give motivations to women to join the army. Well, of course, it's not mandatory for them till now, but they are trying to give some motivation and promote patriotic spirit. They are also they have also passed a law that promotes general militarization and joining the army. And in case of war, they can mandate obligatory military service for even if you are over 50 years of age, which did not apply till recently, but it is a clear sign of preparation for war, not only against Turkey, which is the main goal, but also in the context of wars of imperialism, both in the Middle East and in Ukraine. So in the last case of attack against Iran, they have played a crucial role to support the Zionist regime and the USA with a strong frigate that they have recently purchased from France, which is increasing tension in Cyprus and also defending, providing air defenses for the Zionist regime. They have also provided Patriot missiles for Saudi Arabia and other reactionary regimes in the Arab Peninsula, and also protecting Bulgaria from possible Iranian missile attacks. That is, they are exploiting every chance in the region, every opportunity to increase their military presence and tackle some goals of the rival Turkish capital. So this is very dangerous for our people, and we are trying to focus on this issue because it is the main argument against the people of our reactionary government. They just say we are threatened by Turkey, so we need to militarize. We need to purchase more and more weapons. We have to have a really enormous military budget, and so the movement is actually pro-Turkish, pro-Erdogan or something like that, and we have to oppress anti-war and anti-imperialist movement. And this is a main goal, in our opinion, should be the main goal of the Greek movement to at first on the one side to build covertly and militant touch with Greek, with Turkish comrades and organizations and the movement, and to launch a very wide campaign to tackle nationalism and to provide internationalist arguments against drilling, against the military budget, and of course, and I'm trying just to conclude with this, to connect this with the internationalist struggle, with the defense of Iranian people and Palestinian people. And it is crucial to build anti-war, anti-imperialist committees in sections of the working class, in trade unions, in university faculties, and in schools. And just one last remark, just remember that recently school pupils of my school were obliged to attend a meeting organized by the Greek Navy, and there was they have to listen to appalling, preposterous military and nationalist propaganda by officers. So this is a clear sign of what our reactionary government is up to and what they are planning. Thank you very much.
Dennis, thank you so much for your speech. So next I have Bastian Leitz. I hope I'm reading everybody's names as correctly as possible, from Germany, SDS. Bastian, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. All right. So the floor is yours.
All right, teşekkürler. To be honest, I didn't even know of the NATO summit being held in Ankara until like the invitation of the call. It's tough to keep up with anything nowadays. The news are flooded with stuff that makes me want to throw away my phone for good. But that definitely wouldn't help. So I'm really glad to be here among all of you comrades, talking about the NATO summit and our current political situation. It really like it feels kind of surreal, but it's a really good sign to have this call. Just like all of the younger people, I only remember the Cold War from history books, but here we are. I get to witness it firsthand, even though, of course, like the last Cold War, it isn't that cold after all. Hundreds of thousands of people have already been killed, and there's no end in sight. And of course, the NATO's answer is again to increase military spending. But I think there's no point in me talking too much about the specifics of this conflict. Firstly, because there's people way more qualified, probably. And secondly, because the complex entanglements hide the real reason these conflicts come up again and again, and that is capitalism and its never-ending thirst for power. When reading up the founding of the NATO in 1949, I read that it was founded not only to deter the Soviet Union, but also, and I quote, to forbid the revival of nationalist militarism in Europe. And well, that's exactly what's happening with most of the NATO countries right now. And a wise man once said, "You have become the very thing you swore to destroy." It's, you can judge for yourself if it was a wise man. It was Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars, a movie written about imperialism as well. So I thought it actually does fit a little bit. But in all seriousness, it's a really dangerous development in times when it feels like international law is used only as an excuse to break it for yourself. It feels like many doors are open for oppressive governments to do whatever the hell they want. And that is what we are starting to see more and more of in Germany as well. Our chancellor and, like, honestly, the whole government basically makes headlines with stuff that would have made people resign a few years ago. Like in many countries, the extreme right is not only gaining traction, but its language and its demands are making its way into the mid of the in the midst of the majority of the people. And all the while, the military and police spending is drastically increased. We see ads for the military everywhere, online, in the streets, and in our universities. And ads that remind me of the classic propaganda stuff that we were warned about a few years back. All we hear is we don't have enough money for this and that. Hospitals are closing because they aren't profitable enough, and most of the blame is being put on immigrants that fled here because of wars fought with Germans' weapons. And the weapons are supposed to keep coming as well. Companies that used to produce cars like Volkswagen, but also printing factories, are now looking into building weapons to keep the economy booming. And what's booming right now is weapons. And the government even dares to call it investments in our future. The funding cuts, or more like the reallocation of funds, are also visible in universities. In some cities, comrades had to fight against the teaching of courses that are directly aimed at weapon systems. So they would learn in public universities how to improve these weapons, which would in turn mean how to kill more people. And we do have universities for that normally, like military universities. But it's not only the teaching of the courses, it's also the research they do. In most cities, it isn't that obvious, but the cuts for education mean that the universities need to find research topics that are profitable. And the institutes then get money from arms manufacturers to improve all kinds of stuff. The University of Dresden, for example, has a contract with Elbit Systems. I didn't realize my speech was that long, apparently. But yeah, universities are getting more into weapons productions by day, and I think it's like only the start. Many young people realize that this isn't the future they want, though, and many are joining leftist groups as well already, and I think that opens up a big chance for us. As SDS, we are making a big meeting this year as well, because we want to discuss and take the young people that are angry right now and turn their anger into action and just show them that a better world is possible and that we can change it together.
Thank you so much, Bastian. And if I'm allowed to make the joke, may the force be with you. I had to do this. Next speaker will be Vehbi Shishman. Vehbi, are you there?
I'm here. Is my voice clear?
Oh, okay. Yes, amazing. Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you. So Vehbi is from Turkey, with the student union. And will the speech be in Turkish or English?
In English.
In English. Amazing. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear friends and comrades, I'm Vehbi, and I want to thank you on behalf of the Student Union for inviting us to this important webinar about saying no to NATO and imperialism. In these days of constant violence and war on Iran and ongoing genocide in Gaza, not just the region's people, but the world as a whole is at a great risk because of the rogue-like behaviors of US imperialism and its closest ally, the genocidal Zionist regime. Each day we wake up to the news of more violence, more strikes, and more wars. So I want to thank you again for raising an anti-imperialist voice against this so-called global order. The student union rose again from the last year's mass protest against the anti-democratic practices of Turkey's 24-year-old regime. Youth as a whole participated in these protests. There were many high school and university students, most of which need to work in a job to finance themselves. First, we tore down the frightful atmosphere that Turkey's youth was stuck in by the regime. Now we are raising a common voice for all of us against them via the student union. Of course, it's very important to show the link between us as a youth and an anti-imperialist movement. And that link has a history. Generation 68 is a symbol of anti-capitalist movements in many different countries. In Turkey, it is also the very symbol and the memory of youth anti-imperialist movements. Even if anti-imperialism has deeper roots than 60s and 70s, Generation 68 and what they left behind is still remembered as a symbol by youth. When the Sixth Fleet of the US Navy arrived at the Bosphorus planning to anchor to Dolmabahce, they find the youth against them. Our chant is still the same as theirs when Generation 68 did not let US imperialism onto this soil. Fully independent Turkey. You can hear this chant in very different protests here. That is because youth still has a deep connection with anti-imperialism. That is why we are opposed to NATO and what it stands for. We know that it is not an organization of peace and so-called self-defense. NATO is an imperialist war organization that means not peace, but death, destruction, occupation, and exploitation. It is the organization that suppresses labor movements via the founding counter-guerrillas who kill revolutionaries, workers, union and political party leaders, intellectuals. And today, NATO helps Zionist regime of Israel to continue its genocide in Gaza and its war with Iran. Since 1952, Turkey is a member of this criminal organization. Since that day, over 20 NATO and US bases have been established. And another one will be established in this year's summit, which will be held in Ankara. For us, anti-imperialist movements and movements against anti-democratic capitalist regime of AKP, the government, shouldn't be seen apart from each other. One is to make our country democratic, and the other one is to make it independent. As a whole, they are to make our country ours. That is why we are against US imperialism and the NATO alliance. Just like we were protesting against the government last year, we will also be protesting against the government assurance, NATO. And I want to thank you again for this webinar, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, and I see like in my screen as a Collonge from France, NPAA. Again, I'm sorry about any mispronounced names. Feel free to correct me whenever. Okay, so the floor is yours, Elsa.
Thanks a lot, no problem, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for this invitation and this topic that is very, very important question for now. I am from the NPA from France, and I'm going to talk about our activities, anti-militarist activities in France. So for internationalist activists, as we are, militarism issues are a major concern in France because France is the second largest arms exporter after the USA. So the most important companies are well known in France: Airbus, Dassault, Thales, MBDA, and they are specialized in arms production, and this arms production represents 80% of their turnover. But I must say the arms industry actually involved more than 3,000 companies in France, whose production is more diversified, so not only arms. And the most important sector is aeronautics, but there is a lot of manufacturers that are involved in the arms industry, that like computers, electronics, optical products, including communication and navigation equipment. And the production in France began to grow since end of 2023, and it has increased by more than 20% compared to 2022. So it's a very, very important industry in France, I must say. And I must say the mobilization are not at a good level against militarism. They are unfortunately weak in France. But we managed to organize demonstrations, particularly against genocide in Gaza, with thousands of people, thanks to organizations like Urgence Palestine or AFPS, and so very large coalition. And Stop Arming Israel, that you may know in other countries, tries to question workers of industries that are cooperating with Israel in particular, and they try to work with trade unions on these subjects. So they have organized many lift-led distribution in front of Thales, for example, in front of production sites. So there were workers, and they distribute and discuss with workers. And in my company, with my trade union, we held a 2-hour strike and a rally in front of the company last year against collaboration with Israel. So it is little things, but it's things that we can do just now in France. Because in fact workers are facing employment blackmail, and trade unions and worker struggles are really not in position to discuss what is produced and for whom. So we are questioning our government in France about sending arms to the Ukrainian or Palestinian resistance and not selling them to Israel or India or Qatar or countries like this. But in fact, it's a propaganda question for now and not really mobilization, large mobilization. So as anti-capitalist activists, we have to put those questions on the table regarding the urgency of situation in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Ukraine, in Yemen, and so on. And people are generally sensitive to a humanitarian emergency, and we must build on this very legitimate awareness to mobilize people, and particular workers concerned directly by arms production. Despite all the difficulties, we are involved in many mobilization, so like for solidarity with Palestinian people. And today, flotillas left from Marseille in the south of France to protest against the genocide. And we hope the flotilla will reach Gaza and break the blockade and help to keep the world eyes on Gaza. And there is an activist from NPA who boarded on one of the boats we leave today. And the second important thing I want to talk about is the mobilization in June against the G7 summit in Evian. At the moment, the rallies and the demonstrations are forbidden in Geneva and in France. So the first step is to win the right to protest, which is a fundamental right, of course. But either way, we are trying to mobilize and the social movement in France to organize buses to bring people from France to Geneva for the demonstration. And we are discussing with a very huge, a very large coalition of movement, trade unions and party from France and Swiss. And maybe it will be larger in the next months. So to finish, we know that the NATO Summit will take place in Turkey in July. And of course, if we don't manage to demonstrate in Geneva, it will not help you to organize this mobilization. And on the contrary, I hope if we demonstrate, the demonstration is successful in Geneva, it will be an encouragement for the protest against NATO in July in Turkey. And maybe we'll meet there. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Thank you once again. We will be very glad to see people in Turkey face to face, hopefully. So cool. Next, I have Alessio Arena from Italy, Fronte Popolare. I see you, I think, Alessio.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you. Okay, so
Thank you.
Okay, I'll give the floor to you. Thank you.
Dear comrades, first of all, I would like to thank the Workers' Party of Turkey for organizing this webinar. The wide participation from across the world reflects both Turkey's central role in our Mediterranean region and in the Middle East, and the strength of a party, the TIP, whose growth represents an important example for all of us in our common struggle against capitalism, imperialism, and war. I will focus briefly on an issue that directly concerns Italy: the growing contradiction between the United States and Europe and the political crisis that NATO is currently experiencing as a consequence of Trump's attitude towards Europe. Since its foundation, NATO has been the main instrument used by the United States to guide and constrain the development of the European capitalism. In this way, Europe has become a key asset in its strategy to control Eurasian space. This rule has come at high cost. Over the decades, countries like Italy have faced CIA terrorism, coups, repression, and external interference aimed at preserving this alignment. At the same time, the ruling classes of Western Europe have faced the contradictions of this relationship. Even during the Cold War, tensions emerged between US interests and those of European powers, from France's withdrawal from NATO under de Gaulle to major economic decisions taken by the US against European competitiveness. After the Cold War, these contradictions became more visible. Disagreements over major strategical and economical issues, from the Iraq War to the failure of trade agreements like TTIP, have shown that the divergence of interests is structural and cannot be fully resolved. This is why in 2019, Emmanuel Macron described NATO as brain dead. More recently, the war in Ukraine, actively provoked by the Biden administration, has marked a turning point, destabilizing our continent in a mid-term perspective. It has put Germany's long-standing energy strategy into crisis and reduced its leadership role within the European Union. At the same time, it has strengthened US influence over Europe. By unleashing the Zionist beast in the Middle East and acting in Central and South Asia, the United States has created a new iron curtain between Western Europe and East Asia, the two main centers of global production and trade. By relying on its allies within the European ruling classes and its political servants, like our Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, the US has also been able to revive and expand NATO. The shift from the Biden administration to the more openly aggressive approach by Trump reflect deeper changes within the US itself, including internal political and social tensions. This shift is intensifying contradictions within the transatlantic alliance. Today, we are witnessing growing friction between the US and Europe, with increasing signs of divergence on economic, political, and military issues, as for example, for the aggression against Iran. This strategic and evolving, this tragic and evolving situation creates both extreme dangers, but imperialism is sharing its weakness too. On the one hand, we see rising instability and the danger of wider conflict. On the other hand, working people across Europe are increasingly dissatisfied and scared. They are facing inflation, declining real wages, precarious employment, and the burden of massive rearmament plans, while also expressing deep concerns about the spread of war. In this context, there is space to rebuild a strong political initiative rooted in internationalism, not a formal or abstract internationalism, but a living, active cooperation among movements and parties. Such an approach can play a decisive role in revitalizing the struggle for socialism. However, in an interconnected world, no country can succeed on its own. The idea of building change in isolation faces clear material and political limits. What is needed is coordination and at the regional level and a broader international perspective that connects struggles across borders. For this reason, the initiative taken today by TIP is so important. It represents a concrete step toward building the kind of international cooperation that is necessary if we want to effectively confront the challenge we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessio. Next, I have Abdullah Korkmazan from Cyprus. The speech will be delivered in Turkish and then there will be an English translation. Abdullah, I guess you're here. I don't see you.
Yes.
Okay.
Merhaba.
Merhaba, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Merci. Öncelikle bu etkinliği düzenleyen siz değerli yoldaşlarıma ve değerli katılımcılara Kıbrıs'tan selamlarımı iletmek istiyorum. Ben Kıbrıs'ın ve Doğu Akdeniz'in içinde bulunduğu durum üzerine konuşmak istiyorum. ABD ve İsrail'in İran'a yönelik saldırıları devam ediyor ve Kıbrıs bu savaşın tamamen ortasında kalmış durumda. Bunun başlıca nedeni Kıbrıs'ın onlarca NATO askeri üssü ve dinleme tesisiyle çevrelenmiş olması. Kıbrıs'ta neler olup bittiğini daha iyi anlamak için kısaca bir tarihsel arka plana bakmakta fayda var diye ben düşünüyorum. Neden bu kadar çok asker ve silahla donatıldı? Kıbrıs tarihi boyunca emperyalizmin, büyük hegemon güçlerin pençesine düşmüş bir ada oldu. Emperyalist Büyük Britanya girdiği her yerde uyguladığı etnik ve bölgesel çelişkileri körükleme ve bölgönet politikasını çökmekte olan Osmanlı İmparatorluğu'ndan 1878 tarihinde ele geçirdiği Kıbrıs'ta da uyguladı. Bölgede kontrolü sağlayıp sürdürmesi ve yayılması için bir köprübaşı işlevi gördü Kıbrıs ve stratejik önemi İkinci Dünya Paylaşım Savaşı'ndan büyük bir yıkım yaşayarak çıkan ve birçok sömürgesini kaybeden Büyük Britanya için daha da arttı. İkinci Dünya Paylaşım Savaşı'ndan sonra dünya hegemonyasını devralan Amerika Birleşik Devletleri emperyalizmi Büyük Britanya ile birlikte bölgede çıkarlarını korumak için Kıbrıs Adası'nı birçok askeri üs ve dinleme tesisiyle bizim genellikle çok kullandığımız tam anlamıyla bir batmayan uçak gemisine dönüştürdüler. Kıbrıs'ın kontrollerinden çıkmaması ve dönemin bağlantısızlar hareketi ve Sovyetler Birliği ile birlikte hareket etmemesi için NATO'nun askersel denetimi altında tutmak için Kıbrıs'ta toplumlar arası çatışmaları körüklediler. Sürekli istikrarsızlığa oynadılar. Nasıl ki bugün Suriye'de ve Orta Doğu'nun çeşitli ülkelerinde yapıyorlar. Doğrudan dolaylı müdahaleleri ve yönlendirmeleriyle iki NATO müttefiki Yunanistan ve Türkiye tarafından fiilen ikiye böldürtülmesinin de zeminini hazırladılar. Faşist Yunan cuntası 15 Temmuz 1974'te Kıbrıs Cumhuriyeti'ne karşı bir darbe düzenledi ve sadece 5 gün sonra Türkiye askeri bir çıkarma yaparak adayı ikiye böldü ve kuzey kısmını işgal etti. Yunanistan ve Türkiye'nin müdahaleleri birçok tarihsel belgeden bugün açıkça ortada, artık bunları biliyoruz belgeleriyle. NATO'nun karargahlarında planlandı ve koordine edildi. Özellikle 1971 Lizbon zirvesinde. Kıbrıs'taki bölünmüşlük emperyalizmin stratejik çıkarlarını ve üstünlüğünü pekiştirdi. Ada üzerinde emperyalist etki ve hegemonya daha da yoğunlaştı. Her iki toplum içerisinde milliyetçilik, fanatizm ve ayrılıkçılık daha da güçlü bir zemin kazandı. Kıbrıslı Türkler, Kıbrıs Rumlar, Ermeniler, Maronitler ve Latinler, tüm Kıbrıs halkı emperyalizmin ve milliyetçiliğin yol açtığı yıkımdan kaynaklanan büyük trajediler yaşadı ve yaşamaya devam ediyor. ABD'nin bölgesel sömürgecilik ve enerji kaynaklarını denetim altında tutma politikaları çerçevesinde oluşturduğu Büyük Orta Doğu projesi de yine Kıbrıs'ı kapsamaktadır. Yakın zamanda yaşanan birkaç örnek verip konuşmamı toparlayayım. 22 Aralık 2017'de Akrotiri hava üssünü ziyaret eden İngiltere Başbakanı Theresa May oradaki askerlere hitaben 2017 yılında 1600'den fazla saldırının Suriye'ye ve bölgedeki diğer onlara göre düşmanlara Akrotiri'den yönetildiğini açıkladı. 14 Nisan 2018 tarihinde Amerika, İngiltere, Fransa Suriye'ye yönelik yıl boyunca onlarca saldırı gerçekleştirdi. Yine 7 Ekim 2023 tarihinden bu yana Amerika, İngiltere, Almanya, Fransa başta olmak üzere Batılı emperyalist devletler Kıbrıs'taki üsler aracılığıyla İsrail'e Gazze ve Lübnan'daki katliamları için askeri ve lojistik destek sağlamaktadır. Bu destek devam ediyor. Silahlar NATO depolarından, Avrupa'daki NATO ordularından Kıbrıs'a geliyor ve buradan Amerika'nın üslerine İsrail'e iletilmeye devam ediyor. Son olarak Kıbrıs'ın İran'a yönelik Amerikan saldırganlığının merkezi üslerinden biri haline geldiğini de yaşayarak görmekteyiz. Bu emperyalist üsler, İngiliz üsleri, NATO üsleri, dinleme üsleri ve limanları Kıbrıslıların iradesine rağmen bu saldırganlıkta şu an kullanılıyor. Bunun sonucu olarak Kıbrıs saldırılar için bir hedef haline gelmiş durumdadır. Biz bu tüm NATO üslerinin ve İngiliz üslerinin ülkemizden sökülüp atılmasını, bu silah yığınaklarının son bulmasını istiyoruz ve şu noktanın çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Kıbrıs uzun zamandır Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin öncülüğündeki bu emperyalist koalisyonun Orta Doğu ve Asya'ya yönelik geliştirdikleri stratejilerinin tam ortasında bulunuyor. Doğu Akdeniz'in uzun bir süredir askerileştirilmesi, militarize edilmesi çabalarının ve bu bölgede geniş bir NATO paktının oluşturulması çabalarının tam merkezinde yer alıyoruz. Bu Türkiye ile de oldukça bağlantılı bir meseledir. Biz Kıbrıs solu olarak emperyalist komploları ve Kıbrıs'a ve bölgemize yönelik saldırganlığı önlemek ve NATO güçlerinin adamızdan çekilmesini sağlamak için yoğun bir çaba harcıyoruz. Bizler Birleşik Federal askerden ve silahtan arındırılmış bir Kıbrıs mücadelesini ilerletmek için siz değerli yoldaşlarla sesimizi birleştirmekten büyük memnuniyet duyuyoruz. NATO'ya ve emperyalizme karşı bölgede bir barış paktının oluşturulması hepimize düşen büyük bir görevdir diye düşünüyorum. Etkinlik ve davetiniz ve dinlediğiniz için teker teker teşekkür ediyorum.
Biz de çok teşekkür ederiz. Thank you. We will hear the English version of the speech now.
Yes, so hello again. I hope my voice is clear.
All good.
First of all, I would like to send my greetings from Cyprus to the comrades who organized this event and to the valuable participants. The US and Israeli attacks against Iran continue, and Cyprus finds itself in the middle of this conflict. This is primarily due to the presence of dozens of NATO military bases and listening facilities in Cyprus. To better understand what is happening in Cyprus, it is helpful to briefly examine the historical background. Cyprus is an island that has been caught in the grip of imperialism throughout its history. Imperialist Great Britain, which applied its divide and rule policy, inciting ethnic and regional conflicts wherever it intervened, also implemented this policy in Cyprus, which it seized from the crumbling Ottoman Empire in 1878. Cyprus' strategic importance, serving as a bridgehead for establishing, maintaining, and expanding its control in the region, increased even further for Great Britain, which emerged from World War II devastated and having lost many of its colonies. After World War II, US imperialism, which assumed global hegemony, together with Great Britain, transformed the island of Cyprus into a veritable, unthinkable aircraft carrier with numerous military bases and listening facilities to protect its interests in the region. To prevent Cyprus from escaping their control and aligning itself with the non-aligned movement and the Soviet Union, and to keep it under NATO's military supervision, they fueled intercommunal conflicts and played on constant instability. Through their direct and indirect interventions and manipulations, they effectively prepared the ground for the division of Cyprus by two NATO allies, Greece and Turkey. The fascist Greek junta staged a coup against the Republic of Cyprus on July 15, 1974. Just 5 days later, Turkey launched a military landing, dividing the island in two and occupying the northern part. The interventions of Greece and Turkey were planned and coordinated at NATO headquarters. The division in Cyprus reinforced the strategic interests and dominance of imperialism. Imperialist influence and hegemony over the island intensified. Nationalism, fanaticism, and separatism gained even stronger ground within both communities. Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, Armenians, Maronites, and Latins all the people of Cyprus have experienced and continue to experience great tragedies caused by the destruction brought by imperialism and nationalism. The Greater Middle East Project, created by the US as part of its regional colonialism and control over energy resources, also includes Cyprus. As seen in the invasion of Iraq and the attacks on Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and Iran, our country has been and is being used as a springboard for attacks on the Middle East and its peoples, with numerous large and small imperialist military bases and listening facilities. Some recent examples clearly demonstrate this situation. During a brief visit to Akrotiri Air Base on December 22, 2017, British Prime Minister Theresa May addressed 200 soldiers stationed there, stating that over 1,600 airstrikes against enemy targets in 2017 were directed from the base. In 2018, British bases were actively used by the US, UK, France, and their allies in their airstrikes against Syria. Dozens of fighter jets taking off from these military bases dropped bombs on Syria. Since October 7, 2023, Western imperialist states, primarily US, UK, Germany, and France, have been providing military and logistical support to Israel for its massacres in Gaza and Lebanon through bases in Cyprus. Numerous newspapers reported that the weapons transferred to Israel were brought from the US and NATO military depots in Europe. Many newspapers also reported that US and UK aircraft taking off from Akrotiri have been periodically striking targets in Yemen. At the same time, we are witnessing firsthand how Cyprus has been turned into one of the central hubs of American aggression against Iran. Imperialist bases, listening facilities, and ports are being used in this aggression against the will of the Cypriots, resulting in Cyprus becoming a target for attacks. Due to the remnants of colonialism in our country, such as British bases and military alliances and buildups, our country is caught in the middle of the war. As Cyprus, we have long been at the very center of the strategies developed by the US-led imperialist coalition towards the Middle East and Asia. Cyprus is at the heart of the efforts to militarize the Eastern Mediterranean and to create a broad NATO pact. As the Cypriot left, we are working to prevent imperialist conspiracies and aggression against Cyprus and our region, and to ensure the withdrawal of NATO forces from our island. We are waging an intense struggle to advance the fight for a united, federal Cyprus free of soldiers and weapons. In this context, uniting our voices against NATO and imperialism and strengthening our solidarity is important and valuable. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Defne, for the translation. So we have, on my list, we have 3 more speakers to go, just to give you a heads up about what's coming next. And then I will slowly try to wrap it up. So if anyone will want some last words or will want to participate, say something, obviously they're more than welcome. But then I'll try to wrap it up and we'll have a closing speech. So that's the timeline we are looking at. With that, I have next Max Isle from, from People's Academy, United States, Tunis. Max, I think you wrote to me. Are you there? Oh, okay, I see you. All right, great. Okay, so we don't hear you yet?
Yes, I
Okay,
hope you
good.
do hear
All
me.
clear. All clear. Okay, thank you. So
Yeah.
the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, to the party for taking the time to organize this. Obviously, given the ongoing threat of nuclear outbreaks, this type of convening is incredibly important. And I also know the situation of Turkey and the strategic role Turkey plays within US and EU imperialism is also making it a very important node, and I also know a very tough place in which to engage in anti-systemic, anti-imperialist, and anti-government struggles. So I think this is important to acknowledge the threat and risk you guys are taking. It's appreciated. I just want to offer, it's hard to go last because everyone has already discussed everything, but I think it goes without saying that the major threat of our world today is not a headless imperialism. It's an imperialism that is concentrated in the US and the EU and to a lesser extent Japan. And it's taking, of course, its brain, its impulses, its planning is coming entirely
from the US. I think maybe what could be a bit lesser appreciated is that this is not a productive imperialism in the sense that it wanted to organize historically in the past, it was interested in organizing certain forms of industrialization. It was interested in organizing markets in the periphery. It was interested in structuring political orders. No. What this imperialism wants to do in its heartland, that is the Arab-Iranian region, is that it wants to salt the earth, right? And this needs to be very much understood. This is not an imperialism that's interested anymore in what we used to call regime change. This is actually an imperialism interested in the collapse of the state and the collapse of the society itself. And this is its great source of profit. This is how it is producing defeat within our movements, which are on the back foot, to say the least, within civil society spheres. And it is no longer an imperialism that is organized exactly on a productive basis. It's an imperialism that sees itself at war with actually a system of production that is outside of its control in China. It is at war in Ukraine with a system of production that has some element of national sovereignty, that has some element of sovereign industrialization, that has some element of sovereign technological capacity, which is Russia. And it is burning up Ukrainian people on behalf of its own capitalist imperative to accumulate and to concentrate the sovereignty of decision making. I think what that also brings to mind, and this is, I won't go on over my quota, what this also really makes clear, I think, is that, and this is the hardest thing when, I think, in my experience, when talking to people also from my homeland, the United States, but also people from Europe, is that this means people need to get over themselves when it comes to peripheral nationalism and peripheral states that are embattled and besieged by the United States. Because the US and the EU, its dog, its poodle, do not make any distinction between so-called regimes and states. In fact, they use the demonization of the so-called regime to collapse the state and to collapse the society. This means, of course, that this obsession with internal contradiction is, first of all, shooting ourselves in the foot. Second of all, of course, the fact is that if the US is collapsing, the US agenda is state collapse itself. And this is how the US profits. It profits from the commodities it sells in the pursuit of state collapse. It profits from putting basically Maginot lines around its centers of accumulation, such as the Zionist entity and the ghost states. Then we need to be very clear that the forces who are resisting that state collapse, which are not Marxist forces, they are not communist forces, they are generally Islamic forces. And they may not be organized democratically, but those are the forces that are actually carrying the burden of defeating imperialism in a very real way. They're actually grinding up the imperialist war machine as we listen to one another today. And we need to understand that if we want to pursue a united front that can actually stop a force that is at this very moment launching missiles at civilian nuclear plants and risking to make the Arab-Iranian region itself uninhabitable for any types of human beings for generations. So thank you very much, and thanks again for organizing this. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Max. So I have next Anna Mili from Greece. Anna, are you okay? If you're
Merhaba
ready.
yoldaş. Merhaba yoldaşlar.
Merhaba.
Davetiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. I'm Anna Mili. I represent the International Communist League, and I'm from the Greek section, the Trotskyist Group of Greece. So this is my report. The US imperialists, in their effort to stop their decline and hold their position as the main hegemonic power, are on a rampage. The US NATO, with the blessings of the Greek bourgeoisie, is using the NATO bases in Greece, which are strategic for the US's goal of controlling the whole region and to attack the Palestinians and Iran. They have bought ports and shipyards in the country for their war interests in the Middle East and in Ukraine, but also for US LNG and for the Sixth Fleet of the US. The working people of Greece, true, hate the US NATO, and they are against the new democracy government for giving the imperialists and Israel all they need. However, despite this, and the solidarity demos, sometimes even big and militant, the workers' movement as a whole, it is weakened. It is far from giving a sharp response to the government and the imperialists. I would disagree with Comrade Litsa with this. It does not exist a strong anti-imperialist movement which would promote the struggle for the defense of the countries attacked by US Israel and also to defend the working and living conditions of the oppressed in Greece. This weakness derived from the defeats that workers had suffered crucially in 2015 when the imperialists, with the aid of the Syriza government, subjugated the country further to the imperialist interests. Unfortunately, communist liberation, Octa Spartakos, and Adarsia, which part of it, instead of trying to smash illusions in Syriza, they tried to push it to the left. Since then, with this defeat, the relationship of forces remained negative at the expense of the workers and in favor of the bourgeoisie and the imperialists. So how to change this? For this to change and have an effective struggle against NATO and EU and the bourgeoisie, first of all, it is necessary to take a clear stand with the defense of Iran. For the victory of Iran, not just solidarity with the people of Iran, like the Greek comrade said earlier. Many organizations in Greece, in the workers' movement, had not done that because of the brutality of the Iranian regime. The regime is indeed brutal, but Marxists have a clear side when the imperialists attack an oppressed country. This is also important if we want to go against the Greek government, which supports the US Israel, including by sending ships to defend the British bases in Cyprus and other stuff. On the other hand, Marxists should fight for their own independent perspective, showing that the Iranian regime cannot be effective in the struggle against imperialism since it cannot unite the people of Iran, the minorities, women. It is unable to unite the whole region as a precondition for a successful struggle against imperialism. Second, the struggle for the defense of Iran, Palestine, Cuba, Venezuela, and others, it needs to be connected with the defense of the people of Greece against the devastating attacks they face. The only way for this in order to unite the oppressed Greeks, immigrants, minorities, women, and others, and in the course of struggle to put the proletariat in a better position to fight, is to put at center stage the struggle for the national liberation of the country against the US, NATO, and the EU, who control every aspect of the political and economic life of the country. Unfortunately, the left reject that course, including our speakers earlier. The fight to shut down all the NATO bases is part of this broader fight against the imperialist subjugation. This will advance the struggle against their Greek lackeys who spend billions in rearmament at the expense of the workers, close to reach 5% of NATO, with the army integrated more and more with NATO, which they will use it not only against other countries, but also against the Greek workers when they will feel threatened. What is necessary, what is urgently needed, is a working class perspective and true anti-imperialist pole in the workers' movement to fight for this cause and against the imperialist pillage independently and in opposition to all wings of the Greek bourgeoisie. This struggle is the only struggle that can bring true unity among the oppressed in the country, but also with their class brothers and sisters in Turkey and elsewhere against their main enemy, US imperialism. This is, again, the only way to advance the struggle against our bourgeoisies who, without their imperialist masters, would stand defenseless in front of a united proletariat at the head of all the oppressed. Down with NATO, shut the bases out of the EU and Euro. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Thank you very much. So, comrades, friends, we are approaching the end of the speeches. So if you do want to speak out during the forum, so I will be very brief in giving words because we're already over time, as you all noticed. So if you would like that, could you please put your names on the chat? This is absolutely the last chance to do so. So just a reminder. Okay, so with that, thank you, Anna, again for your beautiful speech. I have next Markus Hesse from Germany. Sozialistische Alternative. Am I totally, is that totally okay? Off the point, I don't know. Okay, so the floor is yours, Markus.
You can hear me? Acoustically,
Yes,
everything's okay. Okay. I want to talk about the situation in Germany, and I will also want to talk about the role of German imperialism, which is a very they want to become after decades where they could not do this because obviously after the results of the Second World War, German imperialism wants to become a big player and uses the situation now to become one of this. We see a massive increase of militarization, and it has extremely heavy impacts on democratic rights, on social spendings. And yeah, and on the other side, I want to talk a little bit about the resistance and the first parts of resistance that are taking part in Germany. They are coming there. After the after Russia invaded Ukraine, there was the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said we are on a turning point. What he meant with turning point meant that there's no hesitation anymore about demanding to become a big military power. That means the spending on armament has completely unlimited. They have given so-called special funds for militarization. And on the same time, for decades, German governments always said there's a spending break on every other issues. For example, like health, education, and social issues. So on the one side, there's the neoliberal dogma, don't spend anything. We have to keep our money. We have to make nearby austerity politics. On the other side, there's unlimited spending on the military. It's obviously a contradiction, but it shows what preferences this government has. We talked in some contributions that NATO is actually now a little bit in a crisis because of the role of Trump, but this Trump policy of America first and America alone, in fact, definitely leads to a situation where it brings German imperialism, German capitalists to the discussion that they say, now we have to step in. That is our time. And there are debates about militarization of the European Union. There are debates about of EU army. There are debates in German ruling class and in the establishment papers that Germany, France, and Italy are now have to be more independent against USA. And of course, it is in no way anything progressive. The EU is a very neoliberal, militaristic, and undemocratic institution. It was always an instrument of imperialism. And on the one side, of course, we have to fight against US imperialism and its bloody wars. Of course, we have to demand that US military bases have to be closed and that they should not be used for any war, like Iran or like they also did it in Iraq. But on the other side, we have to make clear that can have no illusions in our own imperialism and in European imperialism. And Germany is also one of the biggest weapon suppliers for Israel next to the USA. And the German state is very repressive against anti-Israel protests and pro-Palestinian protest movements. It combines a repression with a complete method of slandering. Like if you are a teacher or works somewhere in the public sector, it can be a big problem if they blame you as anti-Semite if you're in any kind active in Palestinian protest. And how far this goes and the intersection of US, the reactionary character of EU and repression shows actually one example of Hussein Dogan. Maybe you know him. He's the He's a Turkish-German journalist. He is now the German government made the initiative that EU sanctions have been done against him. It means that he just cannot write anymore. He cannot receive money, even personally, even not welfare and stuff like this. And it's that was done by EU laws, and it shows that the German state uses EU for targeting activists. And why they do this? Because German courts can't do anything against this. Yes, militarization goes so far that the state uses laws which directly attack democratic rights. For example, the right to strike in very important sectors. There's a called ASG law. That means the law that makes, for example, in ports, in airports, in hospitals, so that there has to be worked, especially in crisis situations, and that they're using this already now for making pressure against strikes, and it's quite obviously that it will completely increase, that they use militarization and undemocratic emergency rules for deepening such kind of attacks. Resistance is there. There have been school strikes. It shows a layer of young activists who are going on strikes. Okay. Yes. And there was one on the 5th of March, and the next one will be on the 8th of May, which is a very symbolic date because the end of the Second World War. These strikes are not very big. There were 50,000 in different cities, but it's increasing. And I think in schools they are starting committees, and this is the generation which is now targeted by new conscription laws. But I think it's necessary also to bring this topic much more into the trade unions. And until now, the trade union leadership is very much linked with the Social Democrats. They don't play a very good role in this. They're much more, this bureaucracy is quite an obstacle in this struggle. But there are some very good examples of trade union activists who had bring forward initiatives. I telling the Ford workers in Cologne, they are affected by job losses, and they made a resolution that transforming this production into military production is no solution, and they have a very clear anti-militaristic approach. Last, I want to highlight one meeting. As a socialist alternative, we are also active in the party Die Linke, and we built there a revolutionary pole, and we are planning for June, from the 5th to the 7th of June in the city of Kassel. There's an anti-militarism congress. It would be also interesting if we would be happy to people from other countries to join there and to discuss with us. And it could be a good chance to promote the protest in Istanbul and to interconnect there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcus. With that, so our very last speaker, Ferhat Koçak from Die Linke in Germany. Unfortunately, he's traveling, so he's not able to attend in person right now, but he did send us a video in German with subtitles both in Turkish and English. It's a very short one, so we will show that instead. And then, we'll have 3 people I have on the list who have signed up: Amir, Jakub, and Liz. 3 people who want to make very brief, I guess, comments, and then we will close. So that's the timeline for you. So on with the video. Excuse us for a second.
There's no, we can't hear anything.
ein Zeichen setzt mit einem internationalen Friedensgipfel als Gegenpol zu militärischer Eskalation und Machtpolitik. Das ist genau das, was wir brauchen. Orte der Vernetzung, Orte des Widerstandes, Orte, an denen klar wird, wir stehen nicht alleine. Und ich sage ganz deutlich, wer Frieden will, muss sich organisieren. Wer gegen Krieg ist, darf nicht still sein. Deshalb mein Aufruf. Lasst uns diesen Friedensgipfel in Istanbul gemeinsam stark machen. Lasst uns unsere Stimmen verbinden, über Grenzen hinweg. Denn diese Welt, wie sie gerade läuft, ist kein Naturgesetz. Sie ist gemacht und sie kann verändert werden. Gemeinsam, solidarisch, international. Nieder mit Krieg, Unterdrückung und Ausbeutung. Hoch die internationale Solidarität.
Thank you, Farhad. We will pass on all the claps. Okay, so before we close, so as I said, we have 3 more people who would like to have a word. Shall we start with Amir? I don't see you, but if you're here, could you speak up?
No problem. First of all, thanks for this. This is really amazing and bringing everyone together, especially for the Counter Summit in Turkey. We were actually thinking about it, and that's already in terms of, as you know, activists involved in anti-war. I was part of the organizing team of the Hague Counter Summit in 2025. I used to live in the Netherlands, and that was organized through the New Peace Movement, which was bringing together a few organizations. And if there's any elements from the Hague 2025 that programmatically the comrades in Turkey wish to bring forward into 2026, maybe that's possibly a connection we can make. And I'll just put all the links just now in the chat so you can have a look. And you know, it's obviously up to you as the organizers in Turkey to determine that. And then maybe 2 quick more things, if that's okay, Kim. I'm also part of the Stop Rearm Europe campaign, which is working against the 800 billion euro additional spending that's going to go into the armaments. And we're trying to mobilize for the 14th of June in Brussels and elsewhere across Europe. So comrades here in other countries, also, of course, in Turkey too. And we're even trying to internationalize it by going beyond Europe, are welcome to also join us in that week of action. And then I think Maurizio very early on mentioned the 20 June date of the International Peace Conference in London. So I'm just going to drop those links now here in the chat, and with the email addresses and all of that, so people can get in touch. And especially also around Stop Rearm, just to mention that we've got you know, we have the students, we have teachers, we have health workers, scientists, and so on. And any other movements are also welcome besides, of course, the peace movements and anti-war. We really need a whole of society mentality to counter this beginnings of the Third World War. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Türkçe'ye çok kısaca çeviriyorum arkadaşlar. Sanırım artık çevirimiz yok. Amir yoldaşımız daha önce 2025'teki savaş karşıtı Hague'deki protestoları organize eden ekipten olduğunu ve 2026 Ankara'da da eğer ihtiyaç duyulursa tecrübelerini bizimle paylaşabileceğini iletti. Çok sağ olsun. Bir de buraya 2 tane kendi düzenleyecekleri konferansın linkini atacak. Bunlarla ilgilenen olursa, bir şekilde katılabilecek olan olursa irtibata geçebilir. Şu anda chatte bakarsanız linkler geldi. Biri Brüksel, biri Londra gibi gözüküyor. Özet budur. Teşekkürler. Thank you, Amir. Okay, so next I think I have Jakub from Czechia. Is that the right pronunciation?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, amazing.
Merhaba yoldaşlar. Ben Jakub, Ankara'dayım, by the way. So I am vice chair of Party Levice, which means the left or Sol, maybe. We are a democratic socialist party, anti-capitalist, of course. We are part of European left, actually one of the founding parties. Internationalism is important. We need not only European left, but also world left Yeah, there have been internationals, like first, second, fourth. There have been movement for fifth. We hope we will have definitely one time communist international. I thank to the TIP, yeah, not only for this seminar but also for having branches all around the world. We are in contact with the TIP Czechia. We made demonstrations. So we collaborated with them. And now, for instance, I met TIP in person in Kızıldere commemoration, which is very connected, of course, to anti-imperialism, like Mahir Çanayan, Deniz Gezmiş, and others fought very hard against imperialism, and the fight is definitely not lost, and we will avenge their martyrdom with our struggle. So in Czechia, we fight against this initiative to increase the military spending. It's usually used as an excuse because even if it will be increased, it's not a reason to decrease, for instance, healthcare and other sectors, but they use it as an excuse to decrease the other sectors. We are against the mobilization. We have more and more generals in politics. From the screen, we have one uniform next to another. Yeah, it's horrific. Yeah, it resembles the situation which happened sometimes in Turkey. Yeah? And also the break on the healthcare spending. On another hand side, we have and we have war medicine, but yet we are obligated to bleed, kill, and die for such a state which doesn't give us enough. It's so horrific. Yeah? I say no war, but a class war. And of course, we need to defeat the imperialist war not by imperialist peace, but by people's peace. Because imperialist peace is just that imperialists shake their hands, Trump with Putin, but we need to defeat them both and have a socialist revolution in every country. We are in solidarity with Palestine. We have seen sabotage on a weapon factory in Pardubice. But sadly, it led media and police to accuse them from that ugly word starting with T, and they stamp on the activists. It's so brutal, yeah. And the liberal media and even part of the left repeats as like a parrots the word with T and condemn it so strongly, or saying it's counterproductive. But these strong condemns are that contraproductions. Yeah, so we are saying them no. Yeah, just do whatever is legal, but not more. Don't go beyond. Yeah. And there is terrible anti-communist law, which is one of the reason why I sort of fled Czechia, but yeah, maybe I will return. Yeah, but anyway, like it's an opportunity to meet with me here in Ankara. Teşekkür ederim.
Biz teşekkür ederiz. Thank you. Yoldaşımız bize Çekya'dan selamlarını iletti, dayanışma duygularını. Enternasyonel dayanışmanın öneminden bahsetti. Tip Çekya ile irtibatta olduğunu söyledi. Konuşma biraz uzun. Hatırlayabildiklerimi toparlıyorum, not alabildiklerimi. Ve kendi ülkelerinde de özellikle askeri harcamaların azaltılması için çaba içinde olduklarını söyledi. Ve işte Ankara için başarılar diledi mi diyelim. Evet, burada bu şekliyle toparlayayım. So last we have Liz. Liz, are you
Thank
here?
you. Hi, sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera, but is the sound okay?
Yeah, the sound is perfect, so we'll just hear you.
Super, I'll be really quick. I want to thank the Workers' Party so much for organizing this meeting and solidarize with your point that we should all struggle together despite our political differences against NATO and against imperialism. But I want to stress the other side of the United Front as well, the importance of political debate in order to determine a successful strategy for the anti-imperialist struggle. In that framework, I wanted to make 2 points. One is that pacifism is not going to stop Donald Trump, and it's not going to stop Netanyahu. Donald Trump is fighting to maintain world domination for the US empire, and he will is willing to go to any extent of blood and death and devastation to maintain that. And the same is true of Netanyahu with Zionist Israel in the region. And what pacifism does do, however, is to disarm the working people with the idea that there is some method other than they themselves taking matters into their own hands and asserting their own power to disarm the imperialists and stop imperialist war. Secondly, I do want to just quickly draw a lesson from the Palestine movement. I live in London. Here in London, we brought tens of thousands of people out in defense of Palestine for years, but we were not even able to stop the Labour government sending weapons to Zionist Israel. And I think a key problem here was that the movement was built as an alliance with Labour Party politicians and trade union leaders who fundamentally support the interests of their own ruling class, including supporting Zionist Israel as an imperialist proxy in the Middle East, and also supporting disarming Iran and subjugating it through sanctions rather than war. So I think what we're faced with is the need for a political struggle against the supporters of imperialism inside the workers' movement and inside the left. And I want to thank you guys again for hosting the meeting today.
Thank you so much, Liz. I'll just again try to summarize your points very briefly. Liz Londra'dan bağlandığını söyledi ve öncelikle dedi tabii ki uluslararası dayanışmanın önemine hepimiz gibi ben de inanıyorum. Fakat belli konuların tartışılmasının da hepimiz beraberken değerli olduğunu düşünüyorum dedi. Ve özellikle yapmak istediği nokta şuydu: tek başına pasifizm ne emperyalist saldırganlığı ne de Trump'ı durduramayacaktır diye düşünüyorum dedi. Biz İngiltere'de çok uzun süredir büyük Filistin taraftarı ralliler de topladık. Savaş karşıtı mitingler de yaptık. Fakat maalesef kendi hükümetimizin günün sonunda İsrail'e yaptığı savaş yardımlarına engel olmayı başaramadık dedi. Ve bunun da bu mitingleri o zamanki Labour hükümetiyle işbirliği yapmamıza bağlıyorum dedi. Bunu da bir kendi tecrübem ve işte bizim yaptığım, yani bizim organize ettiğimiz hareketlerden öğrendiğim şey olarak aktarmak isterim dedi. Okay, thank you again. This brings us to the end of this long evening. So now I will deliver the floor finally to Meltem Kolgazi from the No to NATO initiative here in Istanbul with us, who will give us the closing speech, maybe some remarks about what's next, what we can do together. And if you would like to keep in contact, please do. We do have, I believe, email addresses and contacts, and we were all very happy to see you. So, Meltem, please.
Hello, good evening. And we had a really long and meaningful meeting today. I want to thank each one of you for your ideas, your sharings, and your standing strong with us. And your input is very important for us. And yes, working together, supporting one another is very, very important for us. At the end of the meeting, I want to wrap up all these topics together, and I will announce the next step at the end of my speech. Let's start with the global banditry, and we saw that it has led to genocide and massive destruction in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Iran, and the role of the NATO and in the region. Recent events showed us that the NATO and bases play an very important role in open or covered warfare in here. And the NATO year-long propaganda, we see that how it poses a security threat to the people in our region. And today, we witnessed Israel draws with its courage for the attacks, and it carries out from the United States and the support it receives from NATO bases in our region. Here, and the member countries, including Turkey, have agreed to increase military spending from 2% to 5% of GDP. And the working class will become even more burdened with this value. And Additionally, it will result in increased pressure on strikes, on public budgets, and can cause greater poverty. NATO is not merely an alliance remembered only in times of war. It's a constant mechanism of control that shapes member countries, sometimes sovereign rights, budgets, foreign policies, and even internal security during peacetime. And NATO is contributing also ecological damage and caused by arms industry in member countries. And the struggle against NATO also means fighting against interventions in the future of our countries. And the wars created by imperialism also cause an economic, social, and ecological problem for us. Millions of people have been and continue to displaced because of these wars. This situation clearly demonstrates that war is not merely a momentary distraction for us. From Lebanon to Gaza, and from Syria to Iran and Afghanistan, millions of people are forced to leave their homes time and again. At the same time, strict border regimes, anti-migrant policies are deepening the crisis. Wars affect women and children, often bear the heaviest burden of violence, displacement, long-term social instability, and the prolonged conflict in Syria near our borders stands a stark example, having led to one of the most severe humanitarian crises. And the millions have been forced to flee their homes. Families are fragmented. At the same time, imperialists and NATO frame their interventions as efforts to bring freedom, democracy, or stability. Indeed, women in war zones frequently face increased risks of exploitation, gender-based violence, and economic marginalization. And wars also lead to long-term ecological destruction and regional devastation. Military operations today create contaminated lands, destroyed ecosystems, and uninhabitable areas. And the humanitarian tragedy and environmental catastrophe that emerged following the Yugoslavia, in which it was a direct actor, has left deep scars in our memory. Governments around the world are falling to take genuine steps in the face of destruction caused by these wars. But we know that the power to stop imperialist aggression and wars lies primarily in our hands and on hands of our working class and our all oppressed peoples. Peace will be only possible with our struggle, with the struggle of people, our people. With this responsibility, we must seek ways to amplify the call of peace. And our solidarity, beginning with this webinar, must also be noted as an effort to oppose NATO and imperialist aggression and to make peace possible. In this struggle for peace, we need the organized struggle of people today more than ever. The individual struggles of our organizations, yes, waging in our countries, of course, they are very valuable. Our solidarity is very valuable. We too are fighting with all our might against the coward overt support that Erdogan regime and NATO provide for war in the region. Today, anti-imperialist forces, we organized marches against NATO and imperialism in major cities across Turkey, including Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. And the top of our demands, there were the immediate closure of NATO bases in Turkey and cancellation of summit planned to be held in Turkey in Ankara. Today, we are taking to streets with all our might to declare that we stand the Palestinian people, Lebanese people, Iranian people. And here, with this webinar, will also be held very important meeting today against NATO, against imperialism. And here we know that NATO also serves as the backbone for Israel's genocidal actions in the region. And launching a counter-struggle against the NATO summit scheduled in July in Ankara is crucial today for amplifying the people's demand for peace, and therefore let us mark today as the beginning of a struggle against the NATO summit to be held in Ankara. As the No to NATO initiative, we see an opportunity to embark on a phase of struggle alongside our friends and comrades. We wish to view our gathering today, thus this webinar, as an opportunity to amplify the voice of peace. We invite you all to organize a peace summit against imperialism, against NATO, against the illegitimacy of the alliance formed by Trump, Netanyahu, and their allies. The NATO summit is a war conference, and let us organize a peace summit in Istanbul together against this war conference in opposition to meeting in the Ankara. Let us strengthen our solidarity. And on July 4 in Istanbul, as the revolutionaries and the No to NATO movement, comprising leftists, socialists, human rights defenders, anti-militarists, let us jointly organize the International Peace Summit. Tomorrow, at the end of this meeting, we will share our declaration with you via email. Through this declaration, we invite you to support and stand in solidarity with our joint initiative to organize a peace summit together. Next step, we will organize a closed meeting for talking the details related to this the program of peace summit. And we will look forward to your support and suggestions. To stay in contact, please follow our social media accounts and website. We will keep you updated on our activities, demonstrations, and we will contact you. We will touch with you for the next step. Thank you for your support, and we will unite and we will win together. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Malta. And I guess with this beautiful speech, we do conclude the evening. Thank you all so much for attending, for your show of solidarity, for sharing your thoughts from your parts of the world. We do sincerely hope everybody is raising their struggles wherever they find themselves, and we also struggle together in international solidarity. We hope to see as many people as possible, obviously, in Istanbul in person, and looking forward to meet. We will keep in touch. And I think that's all I want to say. Have a great evening or day or whatever. For most of us evening, I guess. Okay.
İyi geceler. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you for the moderation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, comrades.